Hey everyone, and welcome to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 124. This is a DC Comics podcast.
Sorry, did you say 124?
I think so. Sorry, 204. I was so concerned about getting the last digit right that I completely ballsed up the first two.
It's okay. I just realized next week is June.
Yes.
So
I think
it's fine.
I think it's okay because most of us are still in March.
Yes, most of us have not escaped March yet.
I'm waiting for hockey to come back. It feels like it should be October. I had the realization that for my 35th birthday, I'm not going to have hockey this year, and that's going to suck.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Whatever.
2020 can go right to hell, but it would just go back to where it is because it is hell.
Anyway, yes, I'm Peter. Joining me as always, complaining about hockey is Matt.
Yeah, the end is nigh.
Connor's also here.
Yeah, our sports should be coming back. I can watch snooker soon. That'll be nice.
I mean, I think out of all the sports that had to stop, like, happening because of everything going on, I feel like snooker and pool are the two where the crowd is so silent anyway. You could have just had them play it and record it.
Oh yeah, it was more about okay, well the players still get close to each other, and
Right.
you got the ref, and so it was more about their protection rather than the crowd. Even when it comes back, there's not going to be a crowd.
Yeah, but less so that, like, compared to other sports, like, it's not like other sports where you're tackling each other on like the field or the rink or whatever.
No, but there's a lot of close proximity to you get right down next to the table and you're breathing quite close to that.
Golf still seems pretty safe.
Yeah,
I like to play golf.
Yeah, I don't get it. I have friends of mine that love golf, and I'm just like, why? Well, maybe because here it's so hot. Maybe wherever they play, it's not as hot. But like, it is, and I'll convert it to
real numbers.
Yeah, to your guys' real numbers.
Yeah, Celsius.
Right now it's 35 degrees Celsius here.
That's hell in this country.
Yeah.
That's 10 more than it is right now, and I'm already feeling miserable, so that's just wonderful news.
And it's still early here. It's going to get hotter. It was whatever 108 equates to you guys, so I'll put that somewhere in the 40s.
I'm pretty sure that's in the 40s, which hell no.
Yeah.
So, well, that's what you get for being in a desert. But it's basically my...
No, I know. You sound like my football coach. When we go, coach, it's hot. We live in a desert. What'd you expect, snow? So, and I get it, but at the same time, after being trapped inside for 2 months, for Mother Nature to turn up the oven, it's just cruel. You guys can come outside. Not really.
We are a country that hates both ends, even mildly. Like, if you're getting to 30, we're like, nah, this is too hot. But if you're getting to freeze it to snow, I don't know. The country grinds to a halt. It's a mess. We can't cope with either end.
Yeah.
Oh, luckily, it's mildly somewhere in the middle most of the year, so that's why we hate both the extremes.
Yeah. But anytime it hits them, it's terrible.
Yes.
See, and my brother and where he lives in Maui, it's technically a desert because they don't get a lot of rain, so he gets higher temperatures plus the humidity. So it'll be about the same as it is here, but with the humidity cranked up because he's in the middle of the ocean, and he doesn't like to hear about the complaining either. So it's a lose-lose on my end.
Although, to correct Connor, you should use plural. They're countries, not our country. We do not live in the same country. Thank you very much.
I was taking the standard English approach. Thank you very much. It is widely accepted.
Yes, below a certain line in the border, yes. So that is...
that certain line being England.
Yes.
I love that James believes that Wales doesn't actually exist and it's just a practical joke.
That would explain a lot of their words.
Yeah, it's just a practical joke that they don't actually know what they're saying. They just speak a gibberish language to make people not talk to them, which I fully understand. But yeah. It's one of my favorite theories. So technically, I mean, really, it's just, really one country. I'm with Connor on this.
Shut your face. If any border needs a wall...
Well,
it's named after Hadrian.
It used to be reinforced, damn it. It used to be twice as tall.
Go back a couple of thousand years to the Roman occupation. You had a very well garrisoned wall.
Twice as thick, twice as tall.
The natives overran and let nature reclaim, so it wasn't that great, Connor.
I mean, it was until the Roman Empire collapsed from within, and they went, screw it.
Hey, I've seen Centurion. I know what happened.
A bastion of historical accuracy, I'm
Yes.
sure.
Yes, with McNulty from The Wire and I think Fassbender was in that.
And Paul Frees, who's Belloc and Ivan Ooze.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you told me who that was because I'm like, I don't know who that is, Matt. You're going to have to give me some context.
Yeah. Wait, was it Belloc or was it Ivan Ooze?
Ivan Ooze.
Yeah, there you go.
Come on, I'm a connoisseur.
Yeah, true.
Yes. Anyway, this is a DC Comics podcast, believe it or not. After that opening 5 minutes, but we did have a DC Comics, and coming up on this week's show, we will be talking about the following books, and we're kind of back to a normal amount, believe it or not. We have Justice League 45, The Flash 754, Aquaman 59, Suicide Squad number 5, Supergirl 41, which of course is digital only. And I didn't actually ask Matt before this. Did you read Terrifics, Matt?
I did not.
Did not.
Even though I was tempted by Mandat and Blue Beetle on the cover, I just didn't.
I also did not. That was a casualty of the gap. But it was, I mean, it was kind of on this weird shaky ground anyway, because I kind of caught up but didn't. I jumped back in for a couple issues.
You've got 3 issues left at the end of it now.
So, of course. So, yeah, scratch Terrifics from the schedule, but it was out this week. Basketful heads number 7, so that's wrapping up. We got the penultimate issue of the Lolo Woods with issue 5. And then I suppose if anyone's read some any digital first, they have a quick section just chatting about those. And then me and Cara have got a couple of Patreon books. Cara's going to be talking about Severed issue 2, and I'm going to be talking about American Vampire issue 7. So it's a bit of a Scott Snyder horror double at the end of the show. So that is what is coming up on this week's episode, which is 204, just for the record, remind you that. Before we start with the news, though, I will take this time, because I should have said this at the start of last week's show rather than the end, promote it properly, because I know a lot of people just turn things off when it starts to get to the plugs section of the show. So there's a new YouTube channel from us, which is simply called Comics from the Multiverse. Now, if you watch the show on YouTube, you're still getting the full episode, although previously in the Multiverse is changing slightly when it comes to the video version. The audio version is staying the same. But what the new channel is, it's basically just the cut-up version of the show where each of the reviews are on their own little video that'll be, anything from 8 to 20 minutes long, depending on what comic book it is. And they'll be in playlists and things like that. So you'll get individual releases of the various reviews. So if you want to go over there and support it and sort of check it out and look at things, I do plan over a long period of time going back and actually working through all the old episodes and putting them all up individually. But that's a long project that'll sort of take place gradually. But the new stuff is going up. Previously is going up from the start since we're only 10 episodes into that. Episode 11's out this weekend. It's actually going to be out the same day as this because that's just the way the dominoes fell. But so go check out the Comics from the Multiverse YouTube channel. But the main show is still going to be on MailFuzz TV for now. It might move at some point, but the full show will still always be there, and the audio version's the same as it always has been. So go and have a look at that. But yes, so let's talk about this week's DC news. Nothing earth-shattering sort of on their own, but there's definitely enough little things. There's a whole batch here that I'm just going to call the cancellations and conversions to digital, and they're all kind of in separate articles, so I'll just kind of work through them here one by one. The biggest one, I think, that's probably the most disappointing for us personally, I know Matt's going to be upset about this, is the outright cancellation of the Kate Spencer Manhunter series, the mini-series that was coming up.
Yep.
I like how he said Matt was disappointed by it. When this news broke out of us, I was the first to react and was very disappointed by it, and you just completely brushed over me there.
Because it's related to everything Bendis is doing. Why would you be the first one that comes to mind?
I mean, I don't know.
Because Bendis wasn't writing it?
Yeah, I can see where it's coming from. However, we just got Manhunter back, and we're going to get a cool series explaining what the hell has been going on, and now it's gone. Thanks, pandemic.
So that's just outright cancelled. It was the retailers got all this information in the last couple of days. This was one of the big headlining elements. After that, though, we have the cancellation. Now, this is not stuff that's super important in terms of what it is, but notable that they're cutting a lot of things that they don't feel that they need to be pushing out there, and that is actually a bunch of facsimile editions, those cheap reprints of the older issues. I won't read what they all are, but there was a bunch scheduled that were all set to come out in the next few months.
I don't think any retailers were too bothered by these ones in particular because, I've seen retailers say, no, these do sell, but only in to walk-ins. No one's ordering these.
Yeah,
it's just hey, if they're there, they might pick it up. But
and there's not
facsimile editions.
Right,
I can't imagine there's a lot of people just walking in and browsing right now, so it probably doesn't make that much of a difference.
No,
Exactly.
and that's kind of what that shop owner was saying, was like, this doesn't impact them that much. Like, they were cool to have on the shelf. I know my shop, when these started coming out, they were just doing the reprints. They would sell them as a bunch during like sales. It's like free comic book day sales or the holiday type stuff. You could get like a thing of them for $5, right? And then that covered theirs. So, well, yeah, they're cool to have, but
Yeah.
you know.
And then sort of going on from there, a bunch of those giants that were coming out are going digital only. So you got Titans Giant issue 2, Flash Giant issue 5, Swamp Thing Giant issue 5, Teen Titans Go / DC Supergirl Special Giant issue 1. These were all meant to be giants that were coming out. Wonder Woman 1984 Giant was another one. They're all going digital only, so these are kind of following the vein.
What was interesting about the wording of this is that they said they would reprint stories digitally at some point in the future, not just, oh, we'll throw Giant number 2 up as an entire thing. So I suspect they'll just cut the stories out and throw them into the digital first line.
Yeah, that's more likely how this is going to happen. So that's that. Again, it's not stuff that we typically cover that much or talk a lot about, but it's noting that there's a lot of stuff right now, all this smaller stuff at the bottom of the solicits that we don't spend much time on.
And some of this is including Gail Simone's Flash that we've been talking about, because that's one of the Flash Giant 5 is Gail Simone's stuff. So, and it's the same with Russell's Swamp Thing. So these are kind of just continuations of where those were. By the looks of it.
If I was to guess here, I would say that they're not really commissioning much new stuff like this right now. It's just the stuff that happened to already be completed is going to get to finish out digitally as a digital first series, as opposed to, rather than they've cancelled the physicals of these, but they're still going to keep making them. And maybe they will eventually make that choice, but I don't think right now that's what they've done. I think right now they're like, okay, we've got all this stuff ready to go. Let's start putting it out digitally, so we're doing something with it.
I'd love to know how these digital ones are selling. Like, what their internal metrics are looking like for these, because I have to imagine there is some appeal to them being only $1 and getting a reasonable amount of content for them.
Yeah, no, I think because these are actually essentially full issues or close to, and in the traditional comic book format,
they're kind of between 15 and 25 pages depending on which one you buy.
But because in the traditional comic book format, I think because they're that and only $1, they feel really good value for what they are. So I suspect that, and given this whole digital first push in the recent months, because we've been building up without any comic books for a little while, I wonder how much of a spike there was in Comixology for sales of digital first books. Like, were people desperate? I mean, we were reading a bunch, and we don't typically read that many digital first books.
Yeah.
That said, this was a lot more than on offer than there usually is. So it's hard to sort of, isolate exactly what the figures are. But hey, and then we also have some more cancellations. Again, some of the smaller stuff. This is the stuff based on, was it
Rooster Teeth?
Thank you.
Stuff.
Yes, I didn't know though.
This was a particular shitty instance because this is the final issues of Ruby and Genlock.
Oh no!
And these were both digital first though. So the first 6 issues of these have already been sold. People who waited for the print versions have bought 6 out of the 7 physical issues, and then the 7th is just never going to happen. That seems way worse than the people who collected Terrifics and then the story finishes out there. Like, this is people who waited to have that choice to have the print single issues and then just not getting the final one.
Yeah, and this especially because this seemed to be catered to a specific fan.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's also not surprising that these two things are probably some of the lowest selling books that DC sell.
They probably are. I think it's a shame that when there's only 1 issue left of each, they didn't just go, fine, we'll finish them off.
Yeah. I guess because with these new printers, not new printers, but new distributors, I guess trimming things at the size whilst the new distributors get used to the demand and the amount.
You kind of act like that was a little bit of a flub there, but new printers could actually be a large part as well. Because they are moving to different printing warehouses. Those printers are running on reduced capacity and staff. So, I mean, that may well have an impact.
It may very well, yeah. But, I mean, because we know that the new distributors said they weren't taking on any more comic, publishers because they didn't know if they could, keep up with the demand and the amount of supply that they're going to have to fulfill. so it makes sense that even with DC, they're maybe limiting slightly by cutting some of these smaller books that, were about to end anyway, which is partly more frustrating in a lot of ways. Like, well, they were about to end anyway, just put out the last one or two. I mean, when it comes to Supergirl, we had 41 this week and 42 is the last issue, and these last two are digital only. Part of you goes, just put out one double-sized issue then. Just put them together and do one. And put it out as a one thing. Just so it's done. But, hey. That's what it is. So, that's Ruby 7 and Genlock, issue 7. The print versions have been cancelled. And then, going further with cancellations and digital only ideas, DC's House of Whispers here. Sandman Universe title House of Whispers were preparing themselves for the series' upcoming end with issue 22. So again, that was already known to be ending. But now DC has informed comic book retailers that the final two issues won't be released in print, favouring digital only releases. There will be a trade collection later at some point, but the final two issues will not be in print, only digital. So that's kind of more like the Supergirl and Terrific situation where they're just not doing the last couple in print. So, and again, you have to imagine this is probably one of the lower selling books overall for DC, just because it is this niche book that's a part of the Sandman corner as opposed to one of the big superheroes.
And it was, like I say, it was ending, and cancelled feels a little unfair because 22 issues for a book like that isn't terrible by any means. That's a reasonable run for that type of book. But 22 issues, I mean, it was already solicited to be cancelled anyway. So it was not the end of the world, I guess, for that book.
Yeah, and then somewhat connected to that, Lucifer, also kind of part of the Sandman universe. So the last issue, 18, was released on March 18th. 19 to 24 will be released directly as a collected edition, or in this case, as an original graphic novel. So this is actually a complete thing where maybe because they happen to just luckily be at the end of an arc, they're deciding to just go straight to a trade for the next 6 issues.
I'm really glad that they went, no, we'll give you a final trade, a full final arc, because they could have just gone, we'll just leave it at 18, tough shit, right? That would have been an easy call for them to make if they'd wanted to. But I guess Lucifer, maybe it was selling well enough. Maybe the trades as a rule sell quite well because of the connection to the previous series and stuff.
Maybe the single issues didn't sell well, but the trades did okay, and that's why this decision was made. It could just be a happenstance of that. Most of it was done. It neatly was at the start and end of it. Because this is the thing, all these other books that are going digital only are getting their final trades. The awkward part is the fact that the people who were collecting the single issues now already have what half of those trades are going to be. So it's got this weird overlap to it. Whereas this is more neat.
This isn't so bad if you look at it as, oh, well, it's a trade of 19 to 24 and you're not getting those in single issues if you've been collecting so far. That feels a little weird. But if you think of it as it was an 18-issue series and then a graphic novel at the end, that's not completely unheard of to have a companion OGN with
it's easier to swallow. It feels neater than any of these other things. Again, a lot of this feels like, well, it's better than not having the things at all, which is where I kind of come down on it. It just is obviously really messy that it is just these 1 or 2 last issues in most cases. But well, there you go. That's Lucifer. So that's all of the cancellations and whatnot.
Well, it just seems to me like they're going through their lowest selling and just culling them. Yeah. Like it's costing them more to print them and ship them, and than the shops are even. And I don't think everything's returnable, right?
Most isn't.
Sits,
yeah.
So it just sits there, and like it kind of sucks because like I'd love my issues, right? So, but at the same time, it's only reinforcing like, hey, maybe you don't need to read as many physical books. Like I want to support my shop, but if they're only carrying the big titles, it's easier just to get the smaller ones on digital.
And sometimes you want to support the smaller ones more because they are the smaller books.
Yeah, right.
And they need your help more. But so, and then the next thing here is, this article I've actually got up is DC blaming Diamond for this, but the main part of the story here is that there was more books that were delayed at the Diamond level in terms of books that were supposed to be coming out on certain dates and get pushed back a little bit. Most of them are trades, admittedly, but there's a few major single issues that are here. Aquaman 59 being a major one, which we're talking about this week, but Diamond aren't actually getting it out to stores apparently until June 2nd, next week.
Yeah, I think there was a Flash issue as
Yeah,
well.
Flash 754, which again also this week. And then Batman the Outsiders number 12, which we already talked about, I'm sure, just came out this week from Diamond, where obviously it was supposed to be May 20th with all the other DC books that were catching up from the
because
gap.
there was a whole slate of things on May 20th that were pushed to this week instead. I think we spoke about that last week briefly.
Yeah. And then a bunch of trades, which I won't get into, but there was about 5 or 6 trades that were pushed as well. From June 2nd to 9th, pretty much all of them, barring one, which was meant to be June 9th anyway. So I don't even know why it's this in the list. Why is it there? It didn't get delayed, technically, so, but whatever. Anyway, so, yeah, they're all obviously all the books are available digitally, and they're available at stores who are getting them, I think, from other sources, from the other distributors.
They are, although I know with regards to Aquaman, DC actually asked the other distributors to pass along a note to the retailer saying, hey, don't sell this one until next week, even though they put out on Comixology for this week.
They did, which is why we're talking about it, because that's where I read it.
They put it out on Comixology, so this is the release date.
Yeah.
But because Diamond messed up, DC were like, hey, guys, do you guys mind not selling it till next week either? And stores have basically just not listened.
Yeah, they actually didn't say anything more in depth. They just said that DC has put out an official statement to retailers saying that Diamond is responsible for the issues and delays, and that's it. It was just really point blank, and it almost feels.
This is the worst breakup happening in public. I kind of love it.
Do you know what it feels like? It feels like now they don't have to rely on them. DC aren't pulling punches; they're just going to be blunt.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I was reading an article on Newsarama the other day about they were interviewing Steve Geppi, who's the owner of Diamond, about why should Diamond be the primary distributor in 2020 given this scenario. And he was like, well, if you go back 25 years before us, it was a mess. We've provided so much consistency. These upstarts, they're just going to get in the way, essentially. I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was a mess. I mean, I don't know. I can't get too specific about it because I wasn't really paying attention to comics at the time. I was also a child. But, yeah, I mean, from everything I've heard about it, yeah, it was a mess before then, and Diamond kind of saved things, and we needed that kind of singular place to sort of get us through a rough time. But I don't necessarily think having 2 or 3 competitors now is such a bad idea.
My favorite quote from this article, I'm just going to read from Geppi. Again, remember, this is the owner of Diamond. Some people complain about all the eggs being in one basket, but if it's a solid basket, it's fine.
That is something Michael Scott would have said on The Office.
Yeah, right? But it's a really good basket. So
we're not abusing the system. We were investigated by the government to not be a monopoly. We are benign and good for the industry. I'm like, okay, if you say so.
Look, yeah.
What do you mean? That's what I said. What do you mean investigated?
The quiet part out loud. Yeah, I didn't know they were being investigated by the government.
Investigated by the government to not be a monopoly, but if you're the only one that exists, then you by default have a monopoly, right?
Well, even so, like, at least here in the States, though, there can be monopolies that are considered for the public good or whatever, if, like, they're the only ones doing it, right? So, like, I know when Teddy Roosevelt was president over 100 years ago, he was busting up all these trusts, but he would allow certain ones to still exist. So, like, he broke up the railroads, but kept, like, Standard Oil, which ended up causing problems later. So, let's look at history and think, maybe this wasn't a good idea. But again, I did not know they were being investigated. So,
I don't know if that's recent though. That might be the context of what he says.
It just says we were investigated.
That could have been 20 years ago.
That could have been near when they started and were taking over.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Whew.
Yes, DC are not pulling punches when it comes to talking about Diamond anymore because they don't need to. They've got 2 other sources for getting their books out. So,
and that's good.
We'll see. We'll see. So it'll be interesting to see once things calm down a lot because it feels because I'm correct if I'm wrong, but DC seem to be sticking with these new distributors, right?
At least until the end of August. We don't know after that.
Yeah, but I remember saying the exact same last month. We know they're with them till the end of July, but we don't know anything after that. But here we are again. We've got another month.
It's very true.
So it could just be next time we get solicits. Oh, it's still on Tuesday. I guess they're still with these new people because Diamond don't do Tuesdays. They really hate Tuesdays for some reason. I mean, Tuesday is a shitty day. I always hate Tuesdays. It's always been one of the worst days of the week.
I like it now because then I wake up and there's new comics. So
it's better now because there's new comics.
What about Tuesdays?
Do you know what it is? It's a personal thing, but when I was in my second year of high school, my worst day for timetable, all my least favorite classes and teachers were all bunched together on a Tuesday.
Discussed this before. I don't know if he discussed it here, but I remember him talking about this.
My worst, because my math teacher that I had later in high school I liked quite a bit, but the teacher I had that year I despised, and then I had German right after, and I hated German. I hated Tuesdays.
School over there is so different.
Pretty good, because Tuesdays in my school were the same for every year, like the morning where they would do like this citizenship class or whatever bullshit they called it. They changed the name of it like every 2 years. And don't get into it. It was a waste of time. So it was literally a waste of time. I'll talk to my friend for an hour, and then I would have music lessons, like for whatever violin or steel band, whatever I was doing that week, and that would take up another hour or two out of other lessons. It would just be an excuse to, hey, don't go do religious studies, go play an instrument instead, and the teachers couldn't do a thing about it. So it was always nice.
That first one sounds like life skills. That's what we called it, I'm sure.
I mean, we probably called it life skills for a year at some point. It was citizenship. It was CPSHE at one point. I think it was.
Oh, that rolls right off the tongue. Yeah, right off the tongue. That one.
I honestly, I don't know how that acronym has stayed with me because I don't know what it stands for. I have no idea.
Anyway, so to get back to the comics.
I was gonna say, for most of my high school, I had weight training first period, which was nice because you just got it out of the way.
You say that as if everyone else does weight training in high school, man.
I'm just saying, it was nice.
You had weight training every day in high school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you're on the football team, that was our class together. It was weight training first period. So and it sucked in the winter because it was really cold, and coach wanted you to run like it wasn't cold.
Huge cultural differences between UK and American schools is school sports are not a thing here. Like you might have there'll be a soccer league or a basketball league, or whatever,
right? Intramural.
That are just okay. Well,
I've seen Harry Potter, Connor. I know how it works,
and that's it.
Yeah, but I don't know anyone who ever went to any of those games. If they did even happen to you, I don't even know if they did.
No, the games happened. There was never a crowd. It was just the people who played the other team. That was it. There was never a crowd.
No one cared. Yeah, no one gives a shit about how high schoolers are playing at football.
Only the people on the teams cared, and I mean, fair enough, they should care. It's they're the ones.
Yeah, they're playing. Yeah. That's
no one else.
Yeah, never mind mascots and cheerleaders and a team name.
That's great. I love it. It's always weird to me that your professional teams don't have a nickname. It's just like wherever FC. And now they're starting to do that with the soccer clubs here.
Over here?
Yeah, well, sure.
Anyway, that's
my team is the Sky Blue.
I'm cutting this conversation here, right? Because this is just going to keep going. Right? Nullifying this here.
I've been a wolf and a bear, and it was great.
There's one more bit of DC news. That sounds very homoerotic, Matt. I'm not going to lie. But there's one more bit of DC news, and that is that there's a new team on Catwoman, starting with issue 25 in September. Ram V is going to be the writer, with artist.
Always rated as Ram 5. I don't care. I know it's Ram V.
Fernando Blanco is going to be doing the art. So yeah, we're starting to get teases for September stuff, even though it's actually quite early for that.
It's really early for that. Usually we get these teases like the week before solicits. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a reason for that. I wonder if they've got something planned for early June that they want to get all this out of the way for first.
Maybe.
But there's no cons. There's not like there's a con to go to or anything like that.
No.
Don't remind us.
How was WonderCon, Matt? Was WonderCon good? Was it nice?
Yeah. If we're gonna play this, it was wonderful. I met Bendis. He gave me a hug because there's no such thing as a pandemic. He let me rub his head. Like I couldn't believe it. That's top 10 moment.
That's called a bendy when he lets you rub his head.
It's a bendy. It is. It's great. Have you got a bendy?
I've never had a bendy, but I've often thought I'd enjoy it, Matt. I'd often thought I'd enjoy it.
It was nice.
He's been a wolf, a bear, and he got a bendy.
Yeah, that's great. That's a shirt.
Oh Oh dear. So I don't know if Carr has any other DC news that
I do. I was
missed.
just going to say, on Ramby with Catwoman,
Yes.
did do a 2-issue arc, 14 and 15.
That's true. So it was kind of maybe a bit of a test run for him.
Yeah, and also has a story with Blanco in the Catwoman 80th, which might actually act as a lead-in now that we know
It might be,
this.
yeah. That makes sense. Which obviously, we'll tell you at the end what's coming next week, but that's one of the things that's coming next week. We got the Catwoman special, so.
I've got a couple of other little bits. One is interesting. DC are getting into webcomics. I don't know if either of you saw this. They it's really short. It's like a 10-panel story, but they say they're going to do more of these, and it'll be like an ongoing thing. But this was on Instagram. It's Instagram exclusive, a Batman webcomic from Tynan, and it's a punchline thing leading into the next issue of Batman.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, DC, I ain't reading no Instagram exclusives. You're just going to have to count that as irrelevant.
You know, that's cool. Get that younger generation. Like, I have an Instagram, but I am never on it. So I saw this, and I was like...
Because it was linked to my Facebook.
Yeah, and so... yeah, man, this is... At least I know that if I wanted to read it, it will always be there for now. So...
Well, until the social media wars of the 2030s happen, and then Instagram gets taken down.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. That's
that is. This is from the site that we don't usually like, but and they're not listing where they're sourcing this information, but it's all about the Shazam solicits being shuffled around.
Mm-hmm.
So Shazam 12, which is out next week, has a whole new solicit. It was a Jeff Johns issue with Eaglesham. It's now apparently a Jeff Loveness issue. And then 12 has become 13, essentially. So there's just like a random fill-in issue beforehand.
Right, so the issue that we're supposed to get is just push back one. So it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, there's more. 14,
okay.
Which was supposed to be a Loveness issue, is now a double-sized Shazam issue. And that is apparently acting as the finale to Johns' run on it. And then 15, which will be solicited in September, is back to Loveness, which is the one that was solicited as 15.
Right, so Johns is coming back to do a regular issue and then a double-sized sort of finale to his story.
Doing issue 13, and then issue 14 will be a double-sized finale, and that'll be the end of Johns'
That's what I just said.
And, yeah, I'm just confirming.
Right.
Nothing against Loveness, but that book's been such a mess in shipping and whatnot. I feel like it's kind of tainted the Shazam. Like, I don't want to say IP, because it really hasn't, but...
Yeah, that's a bit extreme, Matt. It's tainted the entire Shazam. It's maybe made this run less, not the special thing you were hoping it was going to be when you found out Johns was going to do a Shazam book, but I think it's tainted the IP is a bit of an extreme statement.
Yeah, I know, but it just... I was having a discussion with someone that hadn't seen Shazam and didn't realize there was a Shazam comic, because they were like, "Oh, it was really stupid that Shazam came out and there's no Shazam comic." And I was like, "No, there was.
It was just delayed that much.
It was just delayed, but and whatnot." So I just, man, it's such a great thing too. And the director, because they announced that Henry Cavill's coming back as Superman, like they've extended a deal for him to appear in some stuff going forward, or they're working on it. And
which honestly I think is more bad news than it is good, but continue.
For me, as someone that likes him as the image of Superman and what he's done,
I don't disagree with that, but I feel like we're moving forward with a new Batman like entirely,
right?
And yet we're still sort of tying back to this previous shared universe in some small ways, and
I'm okay in the sense of
let me be happy.
Just do movies. Just stop worrying about shared universe. Just make a goddamn good movie.
Right. And so, anyways, my point was David F. Sandberg said, "Here, I fixed it for you," and it was the end of Shazam, where spoilers for people that haven't seen it yet, a year and change. But there's a surprise cameo from Superman, but you never see his face. So he he really horribly photoshopped Henry Cavill's face on top of it in the blank space, and it was real silly. So
Cavill always comes across as a really nice guy who gives a shit
Yep.
about what he does. So
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sure it
if they
makes him fun.
actually let him use his actual charm in the role, he'd actually
Yeah.
probably make a good Superman.
He's an incredibly charismatic fan.
My weird
It's-
thing though is just that I hate that some stuff's connected to the old stuff and some's moving on. Like, I would agree, just give me good movies, but don't remind
I
me
mean-
of the bad stuff.
Yeah, but I
Hey.
mean, Wonder Woman's going to carry on because Wonder Woman's been
Yeah.
performing well, and
But Wonder Woman, but at the same time, they have that back door of technically her first appearance is a last appearance. You know what I mean? In the timeline.
for now,
So, yeah, for now. So
But, I mean,
you can,
who knows what they're going to do with the inevitable third one?
right.
We'll see.
So-
We'll see what happens.
Did you guys see the picture of Robbie Bats?
There was a new one.
Yeah, well, I don't know how new it is, but a friend sent it to me, and he really wanted to rage last night on it. And I had to tell him to calm down. Everyone gets pissed off over the first Batman image. But the more I looked at it, it was like one of those pictures where they're like, the more you look at it, the more it seems messed up. Right? And you start looking at it was a side profile and a front of him in the cowl. And it just looks weird.
I mean, I think he's a pretty good actor. I'm going to wait and see it in action before I really worry.
Yeah, just do me a favor and pull it up. Let me see if I can send it via.
I'm looking. Is this not just the one that was in the red from that first teaser, or?
No. There's a new one that came out. Hold on. I'll send it to you in our chat so you can get
Okay.
a look. But I got. There's my friend. We had a long hockey discussion after that, so I got to dig.
I have to scroll through all the hockey talk to get to this
Yes.
image.
Well, my hometown is getting a minor league hockey team, and they announced the name of it, and it's just the Silver Knights, the Anderson Silver Knights, which very what's the word I'm looking for? Disappointing, I guess.
I mean, it's just when I Google Pattinson Batman and go to images, the first image is in the red, and the second image is actually like a digital fan art thing.
Yeah, it's just Photoshop stuff. Yeah.
Unless this is what this is, but hold on, it's not letting me share it, and it made me real mad.
Old man Matt tries to use internet. And...
No, I am using it properly. It's just my phone wants to act like an a-hole.
Uh-huh.
It's sentient. All right, I just sent it. Now, I don't know if this is real or not. My friends seem to think it was.
That's that fan art thing that me and Peter just
Okay.
mentioned.
Oh yeah, that's not
Good,
real.
good.
Yeah.
I don't like. Basically, it came down to I don't like that the cowl wasn't connected, and Pattinson has way too round of a head to be Batman. If that's the case. Like I know that seems like it shouldn't matter, but I looked up like every other Batman has a very square jaw, like even Val Kilmer for the most part. So yeah. So if this is fan art,
Pattinson has
cool.
quite the jaw on him.
I know, but in that suit where it looks like the Daredevil, his head looks super round. So
I mean, we're judging this off of fan art at this point, so
right.
Yeah. Yes. That was that they look in the fridge sort of thing, and there's nothing there, so the guy gets disappointed, goes away. That GIF, or the "it's effing nothing" GIF. I feel like the last 2 minutes was basically that, where Matt brought up this thing. It was like, oh, this is just not real. There's nothing here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna now. I don't care if he's hungover. I am texting him and TL that it was fake.
it just made you look like a tit on air.
Yes.
Oh, that's fine. I have no problem with that. You guys should know that by now.
Yeah, but
So-
usually it's at least your own fault.
Yeah, true. I mean, this is my own fault, but whatever. I should have known when it didn't pop up in our group that, of course, he's fake Batman news. Bitch.
All right. I guess that wraps up the.
Yeah, that was all
Yes.
the news. You can carry on
Yes.
now.
Oh, excellent. Let's talk about comics then. Justice League issue 45. We have Robert Venditti writing, of course, with Eddy Barrows on the art, and much like the last issue, a lot of double page spreads, a lot of nice big art to look at.
Like how fast
Barrows is good,
Yeah.
but he's not.
Barrows
He's
did.
not thematic.
No. But Barrows did the Freedom Fighters with Venditti, so you can tell they have a pretty good working relationship. Does group stuff real well.
Plus,
I just-
honestly, kind of like him more than Manipul, but whatever.
You have opinions?
Weird.
Well, it's the way Cara dismissed it as if no one would ever think that. I'm like, no, actually, I kind of
didn't
prefer.
say Manipul. I said Zamanico.
He
Is
said
comparing
Zamanico.
it to last issue.
Oh, they said
You
Manipul.
thought
To be
no,
fair,
he said Zamanico,
You just threw out Manipul.
but Manipul had the cover last time we talked about this.
Well, yeah, he has it this time as well.
Yeah.
I looks like Manipul anyway.
Yeah, it looks like Manipul.
I haven't checked, but
Sure,
it
it's
looks
not
like Manipul.
Germanico. This is now a new
Oh.
Starfire thing.
No, I really like Zermanico. I love Zermanico's art. I actually would agree that Zermanico's better than Eddy Barrows. I concur with that statement.
Not enough monsters in this one. Way too much Justice League fighting.
Sure.
That's my quick take.
I'm going to tell you what knocks this issue down a full point and a half immediately. Yeah. It is the repeated, and to the same with the format of the paneling of Justice League member being beaten by another Justice League member, snapping out of the rage for a moment, and then go, the Spectre is right. And like 3 times.
Yes, so to explain what's going on here, they're fighting. The cliffhanger at last issue is that they've all been infected by the influence of the Spectre, and they're all like airing their grievances and fighting each other, and they're kind of snapping out of it here or there, and like you say, it kind of repetitiously goes through. So there's basically 3 pairs, because there's 6 of them here, and we have 3 pairs of fighting, and each one ends with the same thing, where one of them kind of snaps out for a second, and then doubts is like, I shouldn't be doing this, and goes, no, Spectre was right. But there's a tease at the start that basically the idea here is that, unless I'm wrong here, but the way I read this is that Jim Corrigan intentionally pissed off the Amazons so they would trap him. And
and so far, here's my first thing with Venditti here, and I don't know if this is on purpose, so I'm gonna withhold like counting it against it. But the Amazons are never that vehemently anti-men, right? Like if someone showed up on their island, they're not like, death to the man, you know? They're just kind of like, how'd he get here? And so that didn't seem to ring true.
In like 9 out of 10 Origins of Wonder Woman that I've read, they're kind of exactly like that with Steve Trevor until Diana's like, no, don't do that. So, I don't know, it didn't seem that weird. I
don't know. Just in the most modern retellings, they're kind of more passive, like they were pushed here because, and they're more, you know, like I'm not counting Azarillos where they go out and get impregnated and then kill them, you know, and they come back to the island. Not like that, but yeah, just that didn't seem to ring true. It just seemed off, but maybe that's part of it with Corrigan. But I don't know. The last time the Spectre became unbound to a human, we had big, huge events around it. They had Judgment, they had Vengeance, and now this is just in a short arc of Justice League. Yeah, so kind of nerfing the Spectre here. Easy bit.
Yeah, but I mean,
I think the way I'm interpreting is the Spectre is still trapped in Tartarus with Corrigan. Yeah. He is not unbound like those previous events. This is more he is using an outlet through this entrance to Tartarus in the Arctic or Antarctica as we are. So it's not quite as extreme as in those previous examples.
Well, sure, but I feel like Corrigan's endgame is he's done being the Spirit of Vengeance.
Yeah,
it's a great story in itself.
I mean, that's there's nothing wrong with that idea. And they try and like make the Spectre talk with the lasso, and obviously doesn't really go very well, and there's lots of blasting and all that, whatnot. Ultimately, they go to Themyscira because they realize kind of that they have to go there for answers, and Diana takes them there. And I think what's so weird, because she mentions that she's brought them through the barrier that why most people can't find it. And this is the thing. It wasn't that long ago that she couldn't find it. She was barred from it. And obviously we had the big story in Wonder Woman that kind of led her back there for the first time. So this is one of these things where, so technically, okay, she can go back there now. They established that in Wonder Woman relatively recently in Wilson's run. Okay, fine. But it's this thing where they're all going there for the first time, and it's like, oh yeah, so this is the first time I've brought other people, and this is the first time the Justice League have been there. But I feel like I've seen so many stories where it's the first time some of the Justice League members go to Themyscira that I couldn't help but feel like, yeah, I've been here and done this.
Do you know what? That's not even my problem, because I'm willing to go, oh, this is the first time in this continuity. I'm willing to accept that. I just don't think it has the weight that it should for that moment.
No,
it's just kind of whatever. This kind of goes back to, like, I think last time was elevated by the art. The art here's still pretty good, but ultimately it's kind of a B story, just doing B story things.
Yeah,
I think Barrows was a great Batman.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree with that.
Especially in that Antarctic suit.
Well, Barrows did some detective issues with Tynan, so That's not a surprise.
No, that's true. But I think I don't know. I think it's the coat with the collar here that I'm really digging.
That's cool.
I think it's the one thing he draws better than the Zumanico. As a
Well, and the action sequences, despite being repetitive, looks good still.
Oh, they all look great. Those big 2-page splash pages look fantastic. But it's even more kind of feels like we're going through the motions of. Because how many times have we seen the heroes fight each other? How many times have we seen these types of things?
I think it's so formulaic, with it literally being pair fights. One snaps out of it for a second, says the Spectre is right, onto the next pair. Yeah,
they could have done something more with it where, like, as one starting to come out of it, like another, like, because they're paired off into like these sets of two. Like, you could have done something where they start to sort of like intertwine, and like there's like vengeances and like little like issues they have with each other, kind of. Yeah, it could have played a really interesting game of like how it all sort of dominoed from each one to the other, but instead it was this very just strict, like, two people fighting, that's it. Two people fighting, that's it. Two people fighting, that's it. The only interesting moment might be at the end when they kind of snap out of it, even though they're still kind of fighting it down a little bit, but they're more aware of what's happening now. Superman tries to apologize to Batman, and Batman just kind of walks past him and goes, "Okay, let's deal with this. What's going on? Talk, Spectre. You foolish god."
Yeah.
So
Big G.
Big G.
As they call him.
Yeah, Big G.
I liked.
So the cliffhanger is that the Amazons jump out and are like, "Diana, you brought men. We're going to kill you all," basically.
That was big yikes. I had a point I was going to make, and then Connor kept going, and I forgot it. So.
He does that at times.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay.
It happens to me at times as well.
I was running it back. Oh no. It feels like the Justice League book is so bipolar in that it's either the backbone of whatever's going on in the greater DCU, or it's B stories like this. Like, there's never... I don't think anyone, save Morrison, has really made it feel like its own title.
Yeah, you know what's funny about it is that it really has been kind of bounding between those two extremes, because when New 52 by Johns, it was the flagship book, it was the thing driving the universe.
Yeah.
And then we started Rebirth, and Rebirth obviously for the most part was a great phase, and we loved what it did, but the Justice League book, it was oddly just kind of there. It was just this weird book that didn't really have a purpose. And then they restarted it with Snyder, and it's like, okay, love it or hate it, regardless of your feelings, it was clearly still meant to be this new big sort of flagship driving book that's doing all these big things.
Fair to say, for good or bad, it absolutely was the driving force.
Yeah. Right. And now he's off it, and they're off to do Metal 2, Electric Boogaloo. We have this Venditti stuff, and it just kind of feels like it's back to, it's just kind of a nothing book that exists because we have to have a Justice League book.
Well, and it did that even before the New 52, depending on who was on it. Because I remember for a minute, the Justice League was made up of Nightwing, Donna Troy, Congo Bill. Yeah, like
kind of
it was post. Yeah, like it was very, very just. Oh, we can't put in the big guns, so who can we put on the Justice League? And I think James Robinson during that was post Cry for Justice, and like it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't like this is not a Justice League book.
Yeah, I'll say it again. I think it's okay for it to just go on a break for a while when there's nothing to do in it. It's also okay that it's not. Maybe Justice League doesn't even need to be ongoing. Maybe it can be something where it's just a big mini will happen when there's a good Justice League story to tell.
Yeah, the Hellboy model
from there. But I also think it's okay for the book to just be these B stories and kind of having.
Well, if that's the case, then let's have a while where they're fun B stories and they don't feel forgettable. Because at least this is fun. Well, you know what I mean? Like,
I think the issue we're talking about here, though, is that this is of that quality, which is fine if that's the story it was doing, but the actual story it's doing feels like it should be much bigger and should. It feels like it's short-changing moments that should feel like a bigger deal.
Well, in this particular issue, I agree. I think the previous issue nailed the feeling that it was going for. The previous arc, Venditti's first arc on this book, I think was exactly the type of fun B-level story I would like in an ongoing Justice League book.
And well, even if he had more time, because we all know this is just in a holding pattern right now until Metal 2. whenever happens post that.
Well, even then, like it's in a holding pattern through Metal 2, because I don't think this is going to be doing anything important during that, right? Unless they announce something.
We know we've got this arc from Venditti finishing, then we have the Spurrier 6-issue arc,
right?
And I think we've got Loveness for a 2 or 3 part.
But which at that point it'll be pretty much the end of Metal, give or take.
So,
well, it's not. It's double shipping, but
it's double shipping.
But it'll be like halfway through Metal at that point.
Yeah. Right, and who knows what happens after that? But if like I feel like if they had just given Venditti a run and told him have fun, I think it would maintain. But I think him trying to squeeze a Spectre story into like 4 issues.
I think it's worth knowing that I think Venditti was offered a run and been told to have fun, because he kind of made a statement saying no, he stepped away because he had a new book, and with this being double shipping, he couldn't fit it into his schedule. So I think they did offer him that, and he chose to do whatever other project that has yet to be announced.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see. If it's worth mentioning, I didn't mention it in the news, but Tom Taylor was teasing a new DC project on Twitter this week that is not related to Deceased. He pointed out.
Yes, did.
So
maybe we'll learn about that in the September solicits if he's teasing it already.
Hopefully.
I'm trying to figure out what that dude's end game is, because it's always something. We had Deceased, and technically Deceased and a half, I'll say, last week. We get Suicide Squad this week. I'm just saying, we're actually in a pretty nice stream of Tom Taylor now.
It's true, and we're presumably going to have half a Deceased next week.
Yes, with the digital one, yeah.
I will say that he is definitely, like, I had always joked that he's the patron saint of our show. He has definitely stepped into that role with each of his books, just every time nailing it. So maybe that's
we'll get there, Matt, don't worry.
Foresight, yeah.
I mean, this issue just was fine. It feels like it's underselling some big things, where it feels like it's rushing the Spectre stuff, and it feels like the Themyscira stuff just feels like a nothing moment. It should be a bigger deal. So, that's what it is. Matt, what you rating it?
I'm gonna give it a solid 7.
Connor,
I feel that's a bit generous, personally. I'm gonna give it a 6.
Yeah, that's my thing now.
It's true.
I think I lean more towards Connor here.
Wait and see how much we lined up on the last episode of previously.
Yeah, too much. I will agree with the 6 out of 10. I mean, it's a enjoyable enough read. The art's pretty solid. May not be as good as last issue, but like those big 2-page spreads do look good. So if nothing else, the eyes are treated to a decent little series of sequences. But yeah. The Flash 754, Joshua Williamson writing with Rafa Sandoval on the art. I have to ask, Matt, I know you're going to read the end of this. Did you catch up for this particular issue?
I'm ashamed to say I did.
Yes.
I hate Paradox. I went back and I read that issue, and it pissed me off for the rest of my day at work. Not like legit pissed me off, but I'm trying to work thinking like, how the hell, Williamson, how the hell does this even work? With time travel, even in bad time travel movies, this wouldn't work. And I get it. It's a paradox. I love
the idea that Matt's so working just casually said he's like, goddamn Paradox, Williamson, what have you done?
Good job that around.
Well, no. So with how it is now, school's canceled, but we're in our summertime maintenance portion of what I do, and so with this, the limit still going on, there's rules we have to be by. So most of us are working by ourselves. So I have a lot of time to think. And as I'm listening to different shows, my mind can wander after I read an issue of The Flash. So yeah, man. That said, the longer the arc goes, the more I don't mind it, because we're getting less of Paradox.
I don't mopping a big hole. Every so often, it's been like, goddamn Paradox.
Swap mopping for shampooing carpets, and you're dead right.
Close enough.
So that said, I don't like. I like his take on Reverse Flash and how I can't remember what issue because I read them all back to back.
Sure.
Was it this issue, Pete, where he talked about the mini deaths of Eobard Thawne? Or was that the last one?
That was the last one where we sort of went through that. That was the bulk of the issue.
I'll touch on that real quick. That I do like that it seems like these are Thawnes from different points in time, right? And that plays into whatever Paradox's stupid plan is. God, that character's stupid.
Well, to sort of give an idea of what this issue is, though, so there's a scene at the start that shows the 25th century where Reverse Flash beat Paradox, and what I don't think I understood actually from before that surprised me is that, like Thawne already knows he's beaten Paradox already, which is weird. I expected this to be a Thawne before he fought Paradox, so he was going to be surprised that Barry would come to him for help, but he already knows he's done this, so he's mad that he's out. So I've got a question here. So did they go to the Flash Museum to get his staff, the lightning rod?
Right.
I have a question. So once they start fighting and bickering, Thawne and Barry, right? Once, because we cut to Godspeed and Paradox, and they go after on the treadmill again to go find Barry and Thawne because he realizes that Barry's not alone anymore, and Thawne takes Barry back to earlier in the timeline, and he's going to basically kill Paradox before he becomes Paradox, much like he killed his Barry's mum. And of course Barry, when he realizes that's what his plan is, he's like, no, I'm not letting you do this, like this is horrible, this is awful, blah blah blah. And they start fighting. Now this may have been updated because I read this earlier on from Comixology, and they can update things later on.
Yeah.
So I'd be very curious to people who read the print version of this, if it even came out this week. That may have been one of the ones that was delayed earlier. I can't remember. But I'm positive that there's an entire page where all of the dialogue was swapped between Barry and Thawne. That it was coming from the wrong person.
Yes, it did that on mine. I read mine on Thursday.
Yep.
And it was still like that. So it wasn't updated yet.
Yeah.
But it was because I had to read that page 4 times to figure out if there was a miscoloring on the suits, if they misplaced the bubbles.
Well,
just a lettering mistake by the sounds of it. I imagine if it doesn't get fixed on Comixology, it will definitely be fixed for the trade.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty convinced it's the lettering rather than the, because I thought color as well. Maybe just the red and the yellow's been swapped by accident. It's not a big deal. But the symbols though, it's still the Reverse Flash symbol on his suit, so it's not like it's just coloring. So it was so confusing. I was reading this page and I'm like, wait, why does Thawne sound like he's saying that Barry's going too far? Like, why doesn't it make any sense? And then I was like, oh, the dialogue's been swapped.
Not doing enough.
Yeah. It was so weird. It was so weird. And then Thawne yells out as Barry's punching him, "I never kill." Thawne, that's your thing. It's literally your thing.
That's your gimmick, bro. Like.
So this was obviously it's a mistake. It's not intentional, and it'll be fixed for later versions if it's not already fixed online. But
too hard against it, but usually they do, because I'll start a book and then it'll say there's an update ready, and so I've seen that happen before.
I feel like this might take more work though, because it's an entire page of the bubbles being in the wrong place and whatever. Yeah, so but I mean,
so it's not so. I'm not as upset the farther this goes, because now this feels more like the stuff from Williamson I do like, but I hate that every one of these big villains is this big hulking monstrosity.
Yeah, they've all looked really generically comic booky in a way that's just not satisfying.
Yeah, and at least when John's is bringing people in during his Wally run, like all these different villains, they were all unique. Like you had Tar Pit and Girder.
Yep.
And who was the guy? They hated the sound of his voice. Anyways, Murmur. They all were unique and different, and I feel here like Turtle. And I know the Turtles existed before, but like I was just thinking of different ways that this Paradox could have worked, and he doesn't have to be this big hulking monstrosity. He could just be because to me his relationship with Barry is the scientific one, right? Where they both got their powers at the same time because he was studying the multiverse and whatnot.
Paradox could literally just look like a dude. He doesn't have to have a look at all in terms of like super villainy, right? But for some reason he looks like Darkseid with a red cape, and I don't know why, but he does.
Yeah.
And
you could just give him the red cape and be like, that'll do.
Right.
If you want, I suppose.
And just his plan of going back and creating paradoxes to absorb more power. Yeah. Like, what's the end game for him having more power?
It's just so he can.
I'm not sure.
Ruin everything, or the Flash can't beat him at that point. But anyway,
but it's not like he's trying to get back to his family, like as a because I thought that's where it was going, as a tragic figure.
Well, I mean, it's just to explain what actually happens here is, Paradox comes back, shows up when they're trying to kill like him as a human before he became Paradox, and surprises everyone by just killing himself and goes, hey, this is the ultimate paradox, me just killing myself before I became Paradox. So, and then he gets so overloaded with power from this that he starts to just decimate like the entire multiverse, the entire reality just starts to white light, and the big cliffhanger is that he's wiping everything, and Barry and Thawne are like, shit, we have to work together now, and we have to think of this, or this is literally the end of everything. So it ends in this kind of, oh, we're doomed kind of moment.
Yeah, I kind of did like that, him killing himself, creating a paradox. I still hate that it just amps him up more. But I like it story-wise. But if this doesn't lead to a legion of speedsters coming out of the Speed Force, because that was a big thing I picked up on too, catching up on all of these that I'd missed, was that it seems like the Speed Force is intrinsically tied to the multiverse, almost like it's like a river that services all of them. So if we don't get some payoff from like his, Flash of the Future and all of these different stuff coming to stop Paradox, which in its turn is a paradox, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed because it's right there. It's on the table. If I can figure it out,
I mean, honestly, the issue was easy enough to... outside of that one page where all the dialogue was swapped.
Yeah.
It was an easy enough read. It looks decent enough. Like, there's not a lot of complaints as far as comic construction goes. It's mostly just being kind of out of the plot and just not being super invested in what it's doing.
Yeah.
So...
We'll get there.
It's we're limping to the finish line. Let's just call it what it is. We're limping
I will
to the finish
say
line.
that this is the since 750. This is probably, I would say, the best issue that I've read. So the further we're getting away from Paradox as a concept, I think the better. So whatever Williamson has, I kind of trust him. Although that said, I haven't really. I have the last arc of Birthright to go. And he really didn't stick the landing on Nailbiter. Although that said, there's a sequel coming out, so maybe that was the point of Nailbiter. So who knows? I am hopeful, though.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, what are you rating this issue, Matt?
I'm going to give this a 7.5. Just, I didn't hate it as much as I thought I was going to. Coming off of those other two, I was like, oh, get ready. And it didn't happen, and I kind of enjoyed it.
That was surprisingly positive, given the conversation. I will... maybe give it a 6, 5.5 maybe more, kind of in that middling range.
I think if I was week to week like you were with this one, or issue to issue, it might have been impacted a little bit, but because it wasn't as bad as the ones that I read before, then it was fine. But yeah.
Well, hey, I mean, we're limping towards the finish now in September, and then we get a new Flash run from someone, so be exciting to see how that shapes up. Aquaman 59, Kelly Sue DeConnick writing, of course, with Robson Rocha on the art. This starts off with Aquaman barreling into Orm's new kingdom. I can't remember where he is exactly. Because he's there to accuse him of having something to do with Andy's kidnapping, which I have to admit, I'd kind of forgotten about because it'd been such a long time since the last issue.
Oh, yeah, no.
That it took a second to realize.
So, we've had a couple of weeks back now, and some issues have fared better than others in terms of remembering things. I felt this one suffered a lot in my memory compared to things.
And it's not because I've been really enjoying the story, and I think the last issue was solid from what I remember. I remember liking it.
I remember vaguely liking it less than you two did, the last one.
That's fair.
But I don't remember being like, it being bad by any means. For whatever reason, it obviously didn't stick in my memory as well as some other things that we read around that time.
This opening is really fun though, because Aquaman literally just storms into the city with a school of sharks, like going absolutely, forgive the term here, apeshit, because I should think of something fishy, but he just comes in and the sharks.
Is it so small when it's sharks, or has it become a swarm?
Well, it's a frenzy, because you get feeding frenzies. Yeah. So.
Whatever. It's a lot of sharks.
It's a large gathering. I agree.
I love when Aquaman weaponizes sea creatures.
Yeah, but he's especially sort of like vicious here because he makes the sharks like disarm the soldiers that are around. Yep. He jumps in. He has the sharks come after. Dolphin's already there, of course, because Dolphin, if you remember, she kind of get roped
She's in with this group.
Yeah, but the other guy who was sort of saying, "Hey, no, Orm's doing a lot of good. He's feeding people equally, and It's going to treat you better than Ninth Stride. All that kind of came flooding back as they were going through it. And Orm, this is the thing, like Orm actually seems quite genuine here, where he tries to shake his hand and he's like, I have nothing to do with this, I am a father myself now, to the point where I almost believed him. I almost did. To the point where I'm annoyed that he is behind it, not in a way that I think it's poorly written, just in the way that, damn it, Kelly Sue, you got me.
Well, because I want to believe that since what was it, Forever Evil, where he got his family with his stepkid and whatnot. Like, oh no, Orm's a changed man. And clearly, no, he's just moved on to some sneakier stuff. You know, he's just not out in the open about it as much.
No, don't get me wrong. He does smirk at the end when he realizes that this happening kind of weakens his like Aquaman's image, and it weakens maybe the current like throne of Atlantis and all that. So yeah, he's not. I still took the end of him. Okay, you know what? I can be happy about the effects that this might cause in terms of the public image. But
yeah, that's when he's saying, "Oh yeah, the Atlanteans might reconsider who cares for their heir. That they might not want someone so easily provoked." And he's like, this could work out all right.
So despite the fact that he's the most obvious suspect, the little twist that the person who's got Andy at the end comes and sort of answers to him is like, oh, okay, you know what? That was more effective than it had any right to be.
Yeah, but and to me too, is this something that just fell in Orm's lap? Or is it something he set into motion?
Set into motion, definitely.
Seems like it.
Because when she reports back, he's like, "Have you done it?" And the errand. Did you take care of it? And she's like, "Yeah, I did. I can do hard things." So he definitely was an order from him.
Yeah. And meanwhile, back in Amnesty Bay, Callie and that are trying to figure out how to find the kid. Aqualad's there, and he wants to help, and they actually take Callie out on a boat, and there's a brief moment as well before that with his mother, where she's kind of like apologizing for who his father is and so on, and Jackson's kind of saying it's okay, it's not your fault, kind of thing.
She's still Zebellian, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just making sure, because again, that's a thing that gets. I can't remember when exactly it happened. Was that in Teen Titans?
She has to be for him to have his powers.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
just double checking.
So I actually really like the stuff where they're on the boat and they're like basically excavating like the falling mech, and they're getting a piece of it because they want the tech to like help them find where Andy might be.
They want his grandpa because he was the best. He could find shipwrecks better than anybody. It was just like he had an innate sense of it, and if his AI is the same, then they'll be able to help. So I did like that because he's trying to find a tie to his father's side.
Even just the imagery, there's just stuff about them being out there on the boat. It was giving me like Jaws vibes of them being on this little boat out in the ocean, and not that that was about excavating stuff, obviously, but just that I was getting. It was just some fun visuals. I think what I respect about this run is that even though this isn't quite as uniquely weird as the first arc that Kelly Sue did, it still feels like it's doing different things in terms of Aquaman. Because the whole thing that's built into here is that the AI that's based on his grandfather essentially tells him that you need Black Manta's help to find the kid. So the cliffhanger of the issue is Jackson going to Black Manta, and Black Manta basically saying, "My dad want to help you. Why do I care about this kid?"
Yeah,
listen for me.
I don't think it's as interesting as, like, say, the first arc, or even the, the big monster stuff that we had before. I think this is less appealing. I think Manta has consistently been the weakest part of this run. So this has me not concerned, but just inherently less excited.
Well,
I think going forward.
I think that's a little bit unfair though, because Manta's inclusion up until this point has been tied so heavily to the tie-in stuff with the
Year of the Villain.
Year of the Villain, this is maybe the first chance we're actually going to get of this being its own thing, with Kelly Sue just doing what she wants to do with Aqualad. And
that's true, but I think despite that, it still has to prove itself that it can do good Manta stuff now, rather than me coming in from a neutral position and just being excited to see Manta. It's got to overcome that, even though I acknowledge that it was Year of the Villain time bullshit that no one really wanted to do, I'm sure, but it's still there, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I still think Kelly Sue handled it as well as possible, but I like that the underlying thing in this run since Arthur's came back is family dynamics and how they all fit together, whether it's Arthur and Orm, his daughter with, Mera in Atlantis and Volko, and now Jackson and Manta. And then you factor in all the gods and their lineage. That whole was that the first arc where they fought the sea and the salt.
Yeah,
with Arthur. That's again that goes back to family dynamics. So I feel like the lens that Kelly Sue's looking through is through that family. So of course we're gonna get some take on Manta here, you know. So I like it. I think him showing up, like, it did make me groan, but I was like, okay, so we're running Manta back, and I'm not mad at that.
Yeah, my reaction to it wasn't negative. I think it was set up well enough throughout the issue, because the AI says something like, you're going to have to do something, you're not really going to like this, you know, what the advice I'm about to give you.
I want to say, it wasn't that my reaction was negative, but more just it wasn't enthusiastic about seeing it either. It wasn't like, oh, I'm excited to see this. I was more like, oh, okay then.
But what's funny to me, though, is this idea that, like, Aqualad has to get his help to find Aquaman's kid. That to me is what stuck out at the ending of this feeling different, is that it's not just doing the same Black Manta story again that we've seen before. Because Aquaman as a book is sometimes levied with, and quite rightly, frankly, that sometimes it just sort of regurgitates the same, Atlantis is politically unrest and doesn't like the surface world. Like, you know, how often does it focus on those elements? And I think this run so far has done a good job of balancing all the various aspects of Aquaman without just divulging back into that, you know. And I'm sure it'll be, you know, reset at some point, but at least right now, giving Aquaman a daughter and then extending how that affects all these other characters around them does feel like a new ground to explore that hasn't been done. At least I've not read it before in Aquaman, so it feels fresh in that sense to me, which I'm pleased for. So, yeah, and the art's good, of course. You know, sometimes when it's the same artist, you know, issue to issue, we don't mention it as much, but I did find myself thinking this was quite pretty most of the time. So
that's pretty good.
I will say there was a point, I think it was with the some of the Jackson stuff, that I actually for a page or two thought there was a second artist on the book, and obviously there's not, and because the credits are at the end, so I didn't know for sure at that point. But it just looked a little bit rougher around that area, that I thought maybe there was a second artist. But it was the only time I felt it.
All right, Matt, what are you giving it?
I'm gonna give this an 8.
Cool. Connor?
It's a 7 from me.
Yeah, no, I agree with Matt with the 8. That was a solid 8 for me. So, Suicide Squad, issue 5. Tom Taylor writing, of course, Bruno Redondo on the art. And this was another one, even though this is one of my favorite books right now, where it started and I went, okay, why were they after Boomerang again? Like, I remember the gist of it, but
but it came back quick, and then this book went places.
Do you know what? I knew that this was doing something because I'd seen Taylor retweeting things of people, you know, tweeting at him. Nothing spoilery, nothing explicit, but more just, I can't believe you did that, and what the hell?
Yeah, well,
and I thought, oh, does he kill someone major in this issue? Because it's Suicide Squad, right? Yeah, I thought maybe he killed someone.
And there's a moment, well, he kind of does. There's a moment or two. There's a moment where he convinced me, like, he might kill Boomerang here. Like, they might have given him the green light to kill Boomerang. It felt like that at one point. And it doesn't happen. I mean, it gets beat up pretty, you know, in depth, but.
It's kind of messed up. We thought that Australian Tom Taylor was going to kill Australian. Based on no other evidence behind what Twitter was saying.
But I think what this does, that I think is really unique and interesting, is that it's basically, you know, the end of issue 5, which I don't know if this counts as the end of the first arc. I don't know if I would count it as that necessarily.
I think it would. Just that final silhouette definitely feels like an end capper.
But
to whatever's next.
But what it's done here,
the lock arc.
But what it's done here is that it's basically said, this isn't just a Suicide Squad book. It was never going to just be that. The first arc, they were operating like a Suicide Squad, but the actual story that's just the prelude to what they're actually going to be doing. To the point where this isn't. I mean, it's called Suicide Squad, but it doesn't really feel like one anymore.
Now there's no Waller, and Locke, their handler, has just been taken out in a fantastic. Fantastic artistic touch by using the Comics Code logo.
Oh yeah, wonderful. Yeah, it censors it because presumably he wanted to go. I mean, this is the thing. Like, there's various levels of this they could have just shown in the panel, but they made the choice to cover it up with that to imply something so vicious that like, they
couldn't get it past.
Genius.
Yeah.
No,
so
it's funny.
From I think issue 2, I was saying this reminded me of Gail Simone's Secret Six, which when it started was Villains United, which we thought it was going to be one thing when it started because of all the main villains associated with Infinite Crisis on the cover. But then it became like these second-rate heroes here in the protagonists. And then they became their own team and they didn't operate. This is what this feels like. This is look like we're like, yeah, it started as a Suicide Squad, but now they're full on their own thing.
Now it's basically a group of freedom fighters who are doing their own thing because they believe in what they're doing. It's not about following some government
We're
stooge.
improvising.
Basically, this whole new team plus Deadshot and Harley.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it.
And Boomerang, I guess.
Well, what's left of the revolutionaries?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously this issue spends time getting us to really know Jog, because the end of last issue was Jog, the explosion going off when Jog was running towards Boomerang, and it starts off with a bit of his backstory. We get a bit of character, so we care about him. We see him on fire, and then again at the end, he basically sacrifices himself by like stealing all of the detonators for their neck, their neck bombs. All but one, his basically. He left his till last.
You think he knows his is last, like that, and he intentionally made that choice?
I think so.
A poetic coincidence.
I think it's more of a heroic choice that he's made, that he left his till last, because if he can't get to one, he'd rather it be his.
Well, and
I get that thought of and why you would like to that, but I don't know if there's any way for him to know who's got which detonator.
No, the way that I read it too is that he is very selfless, because you see a lot how he got onto Osita's radar was helping out with fires and helping people throughout his home country, and that was just his thing. He was a superhero, for lack of a better term, and when he joined up with them. And
I just realized I'm going to have to learn all these names now, because they actually make Survive beyond a few issues.
I mean, I know at least some of these. I think it was Aryan Wink, although I could be wrong on that.
It's Aryan Wink.
Showing up in the Deceased digital first.
Yeah, we mentioned this last week, did we not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just mean in terms of why, in terms of them just not just surviving past this arc, but becoming part of, I don't want to say wider continuity, because Deceased isn't continuity, but more just they go to show up.
Yeah, they're going to be more
All
prolific.
Wolverine, I get Laura and Angel vibes when I see them together, just because the wings and
sure. And I think it's worth mentioning the editor's note sort of thing at the very end of the next time. It says next week, although I'm pretty sure it's not. Schedules move. It says we'll see the squad on the run in the Flash annual issue 3.
Yeah. So
wider context.
So the thing is that annual I thought I would be skipping because it may not be that important to the run, but now it's more relevant to Suicide Squad. I'm reading that now.
I'm now considering maybe I pick up the annual.
Yeah. So I want to talk about how good the art is. The title page, the silhouette of the fight behind the text, or inside the text more accurately, and then also the stomp.
Everybody nailed that title moment.
Yeah, but the stomp on Boomerang's face at the bottom of that page, I love. The squish of his nose with the boots on top of him is just wonderful.
What's really interesting is the art in this book. The way the colors, it actually reminds me of more of Marvel's house style, and I think it's more the coloring and the way the layers are separated, especially on that Boomerang panel.
Honestly, I think it's not so much that one house style is better than the other, but there's definitely some DC books that benefit more from this style, and I think equally there's probably some Marvel books that would benefit from DC style.
Yeah, I didn't say that it was better. I just said that this reminded me more of Marvel's house style, and I think it's very appropriate for this book. I think it works excellently in this book, and I think there are reviews that me and Pete have done in the past on some Marvel books where we've said the house style definitely didn't work for it.
Yeah. Even Harley stopping Osita from killing Boomerang and her making the choice.
I love that scene.
Yeah.
I will shoot you. I mean, not fatally, but
yeah. Even just the way the bullet ricochets off the car, because they're in like a junkyard. If you don't remember, if you're just listening to us, that is obviously we all know because we're all looking at it right now. But and you've got Jog at this point, half of his face is burned, right? He looks like shit.
He's kind of melted shut.
Yeah, but Osita does this thing where she puts boomerang in his hand and just like crushes his hand out of the boomerang, so there's just blood pouring from his hand. I'm like, that looks painful as shit. Good stuff. So they take him in, and Locke's over the comms being furious. He's like, someone talk to me. I did appreciate the reminder of all the names because there's a lot of new characters still. Yeah. So
I think it was a little weird how late in the issue that they were telling me these names. It wasn't like as they were coming up throughout the issue. No. It's more just here's the lineup shot of them like halfway through.
I kind of get it though, because it's like, okay, it's an easy one to do it on because they're all together. It's one big
They're
image.
all there.
I'm thinking more like when I traditionally think of this sort of ongoing thing, like a Legion book where the first appearance of said Legionnaire in an issue will kind of have the box next to them.
Do you think this might be a conscious choice? Because the moment it's about to happen, that we're about to end the issue on, is really when the team becomes the team that this book is going to be about. And it may be a conscious thing where normally this is earlier on, but no, this is about the dawn of this team being this team.
Right.
Because Locke's standing there, he's got like a shield so they don't hurt him.
He's got Zebra Man's. He's on that. Also, I don't think someone has written Boomerang as well as Taylor, because when he looks, he's on his knees and cuffs in front of Locke, and he says, "Did you get a haircut or something, Waller?"
I love this moment here. I love the pacing and the art here as Locke is saying, "Hey, Deadshot, kill Boomerang," and he's like, "No, that wasn't part of the deal." It's like, "No, you do it. I own you. Do it." And there's this, the panels get thinner, and it's these close-ups of the mouse shouting, and every time it goes to Boomerang, though, I love that he says, "It's okay, Floyd. No hard feelings." Like, I like him sort of accepting it, and Floyd's like going to do it, and then we get the bang, and then of course it's the.
I think it's really effective doing this on the end of a double-page spread because it ensures that there's no way you can see ahead.
Yeah,
like
right.
you sometimes
have
can.
to turn the page, and then
much like
I was shocked.
Yeah, much like like a movie or something where you get the gunshot and then you don't see what the gunshot is, and then you see it in the next page. Deadshot made a choice here. He made a choice to fight back, and he shoots Zebra Man instead, which kills the shield, and then he shoots Locke in the face.
And this is the quote unquote sensitive moment.
Yeah, and it's like, and I legitimately went, holy shit! I did not see it, because they spent time setting up this character, but it doesn't. At the same time, it doesn't feel like a waste of the potential they had, because it feels like the whole point of this was to say, no, this book is not this, and you thinking it was a subversion.
Well, it built Locke up enough that Deadshot making this choice to blow his head off feels really deserved and earned in like 5 issues.
It means something.
Right? We know he's a bastard from what was it, and then even his design speaks to like, oh, I wonder how he got that scar on his face, right? Like, what happened to put him in the position of lording over the Suicide Squad? And it all seemed to like, oh no, he's going to be the big bad of this. And then Tom Taylor goes, nope, gotcha.
I think it's great because I think it was last issue we had the idea that, oh, he's actually reporting to someone and he's not the big bad, but he still didn't feel expendable in
which is important. Which is important to remind us. It's important to remind us of that though, because it means that we do still have a big bad. We still have someone who's going to be coming after the squad, who's going to be wanting vengeance for us, and we'll get to who that is in a minute. Don't jump ahead, Matt.
I'm not jumping ahead.
I know you want to talk about it.
I'm confused. That's all.
Right. Yeah, we'll get to that. Bizarrely though, I'll just say, and Taylor I trust. That's basically what I'm going to say.
I tweeted at Taylor after I read this. I'm like, oh, what the hell? I need answers.
Right.
And friend of the show, Talking Superman, responded to my tweet with something that I will say what he tweeted exactly when we get to who it was. But it was notable that Taylor liked his response to
okay, all right, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So basically, once Deadshot does this, but before, I want to talk about Deadshot making this choice, because I think Deadshot being the character who kind of stumbled into their secret plan, this group, because they had their plan within the plan, they wanted to be part of Suicide Squad so they could do this stuff, and issue 2 or 3 is when Deadshot kind of stumbled into it, and they made the choice to let Deadshot live. I think there's something about Deadshot making the choice to go from just accepting his fate and working for the Suicide Squad, working for Locke, after Waller, and just accepting that he's this prisoner, that he can't do anything, but then making the choice here to actually fight for something, that he won't just be a dog, he won't just like lay down and do what he's told. It actually feels quite an uplifting moment, even for a character like Deadshot, who's a bit of an anti-hero, who does some questionable things at times.
Yeah, and he was on that Secret Six team, and he had the same, not the same exact arc, but he has the same kind of arc where Catman's kind of the main character of that book, but Floyd's like his counter on it, and you see him accept the Secret Six as a family, because he's the one that's just like, no. And here Taylor gets to it to where, like you said, he's not going to be resigned to this fate of being on the Suicide Squad. He's in control. And
as much he would never.
Feels right.
I don't think he would ever admit this, but I think you can maybe read into this that he's almost a little inspired by these people around him. That them doing this and fighting back the way they have is maybe created an itch that he didn't know he had, or pointed out something that he maybe felt already that he's not, now he's willing to fight back. He hopes again to I guess put it in sort of the broadest term. So they run around fighting, and Jog runs around just getting all the triggers for all the bombs in the necks, and gets all but one. Which then blows up him, and he sort of says his goodbye. He's like chasing them down. It's kind of this, thank you moment, and then we get this glorious shot in silhouette of his head just disappearing with the blinding light. It's wonderful.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I was reading this as he was kind of bringing Osita into. I'm going to borrow a term from the TV show, flash time, so to speak. Here, this was all in that instant of the thumb being pressed, and brought Osita into the speed with him. To kind of have that goodbye moment.
I never really thought about it, but it seems like that's probably the case.
If you go like 2 pages before the explosion of his head happens, the bottom panel is actually the reflection in his goggles of the button starting to be pressed, and then you have the whole page with Osita. So I was assuming that was all like him bringing her into the speed, and maybe I'm reading that wrong, but no, I like that. That's it just established as a little beat.
Yeah, no, I think they may have something there. The idea that in the time it takes for the signal of the button to reach his neck to trigger the explosion, he has this split second to say something at super speed. Yeah, no, it's a neat moment. And then so you have this bright explosion panel with the boom, and then this sort of muted panel where it's just the blood spatter on Osita's face as she sort of got her eyes shut. It's really effective,
especially as if I'm right, she's the only one who heard that goodbye. So she's the only one who had that moment. Everyone else is in shock, even more than she is, because she kind of had a slight preparation, maybe.
And then there's that glorious panel on the next page of her walking up to the guy who just pressed this button. He's the only one left. It's worth mentioning of the team, who were fighting against him. And she's just in complete shadows. Like her face is covered. She's this imposing figure, and the guy is shitting himself. It's good stuff. Deadly Six uses his powers to make him
greedy,
yeah.
Self-preservation.
So he'll sort of like do what he's told, with the promise of things, and so we find out who Locke was working for, and I actually sort of, there was a moment of shock, and then there was a moment of, I wonder what Matt thinks of this. I think Matt's going to be upset with that.
I'm upset. I was like, what the hell? What are you doing?
So the person who's behind this is none other than Ted Cord.
Yeah. Who,
like,
this is like... So my introduction to Ted Cord was the Infinite Crisis special, where he ends up being killed by Max Lord because he's the only one that's able to piece things together on his own. And it's this very selfless sacrifice of him trying to stop things.
Him has such a strong character as being the only one to figure this out.
Yeah, because he's the only one looking, and no one will listen to him, and and his death ends up kicking everything off, and he's a sacrificial lamb. And then that's been it as far as I've been reading comics. Like I've gone back and read like I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League and whatnot, and him and Booster Gold, and there's a whole part of Booster Solo series where he tries to go back, but if he goes back and saves Ted, it completely ruins the timeline.
Yeah, there was the stuff with him with as the Blue Beetle with Jaime.
The start of
Rebirth, and
and obviously,
he's a blank slate.
It obviously popped up in Heroes in Crisis as well. It was there with Booster Gold there. Yeah,
he was.
There's no point in debating this. It happened.
So I'm not questioning it. I was like, did he?
But there's this awkward pause afterwards, as if I'm expected to prove it. I'm like, no, it happened. Let's move on.
I wasn't expecting to prove it. I was like, did he? Like genuine, surprise.
Yeah. So we get this reveal of Ted and the other characters, where Osita kind of like faces him down over the phone because he's on a call because they made the guy call him. And Ted's like, I want you, if I were you, I'd surrender. And, if I were you, Ted, and she says, start running. So we end in this full page spread of the whole team, including Harley and Deadshot, and even Boomerang.
And Zebra. He's joining them too.
He looks terrified of jumping out that window.
Oh, Boomerang does? Yeah, Boomerang's like...
Zebra.
Oh, well, I mean, I think Boomerang does too. It looks like he's clutching that rope for dear life.
Oh, no, he looks like he's clutching it, but Zebra's face is like, oh god, what are we doing?
No, what have I done? What did I get myself into?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's notable that this is kind of like, I think intentionally kind of like almost a play in the classic Dark Knight Returns cover, where instead of like jumping in front of lightning at night time, they're jumping in front of the sun in the bright daylight, and they're all kind of like, they're all instead of being in this dramatic pose, it's a variety of different things, kind of pointing out the differences between them all and how much of an eclectic mix it is.
His pose is relatively close.
Yeah, she's probably the one with the most of a mission statement, right? She's the one that's the most. Mm-hmm. No, she's nothing like Batman, but she's the one with the most of a war and crime to be declared kind of thing.
Very clearly established herself as kind of the leader of the revolutions.
Yeah. Well, she's the one that put them together.
Yeah.
To get vengeance on the Suicide Squad.
I wonder.
She's the most drive.
I wonder if they actually take the name Suicide Squad now and sort of adopt it and say, no, we're going to call ourselves this now. Mm-hmm.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, is that because Booster's not gonna be a fan of Ted. I'm gonna say that much. This is why he's hanging out with Harley Quinn now.
Booster would slap him around, being like, "What the hell are you playing at, Blue?"
Exactly. And so, Cord goes, I don't think you realize how much trouble you're in. You don't know how many interests are tied in this little operation. How important your silence is to some very powerful, unforgiving people. And I try to think of, is there any other character that they could have put, that Taylor could have put in here, like a rich character in DC, where it would have been this chilling, and I don't think he could have.
Yeah, it was surprising. It was genuinely
surprising. And this coming from Ted, who the most I know of him is he's this fun-loving, like, sure, he has Cord Industries, right? Like, it's this, but he's kind of a buffoon. His best friend's Mr. Gold.
Industries is essentially a means to an end for him to do his superheroing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll let Connor tell us what tweet he liked in a minute, because that may actually point us in a direction. But my first thought was, well, is it really Ted? Is this a doppelganger or a shapeshifter? Is there something else going on here? My mind was sort of thinking, okay, what the possibilities here is to explain why Ted's behind this?
It's possible. I don't think so, given that he is in the Cord Industries office. Like, it's not just him looking over the phone. It cuts to show us him in the office, and I mean, sure, a doppelganger could be there anyway, but I feel like that would be too easy almost at that point.
I mean, it could be, but I mean, possibilities.
Yeah, no, I'm not ruling that entirely. The tweet was really simple, because it was like, hey, Tom Taylor, what the damn hell? We need answers. Right. And Talking Superman just responded with, maybe the answer is rich people suck. And that's what Tom Taylor liked.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the implication that maybe Ted's not the guy we thought he was.
No, and that's what makes it so chilling. Was that all a front? Is this a new version of Ted that Taylor's going to build from the ground up? Because if this is someone like Lex, it doesn't have the same power. We're like, oh, it's Lex doing Lex stuff.
I mean,
what's interesting is he tries to not present as villainous. He's like, look, I've been pretty sympathetic to what you've been through. I don't want to see you hurt. I've got effective friends I can send after you, and there are other people who care about this more than I do, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, if it was Lex, it wouldn't be a bad reveal. It'd be like, oh, that's fun. Lex is behind this new Suicide Squad.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have been like, I got to Ted Cord, and it was a serious what the
of course. That's my point, is that Ted's shocking, whereas Lex would be a fun reveal, but it wouldn't be a surprising reveal. It'd be because the surprise there wouldn't be that Lex would do this kind of thing. It would more just be that, oh, wait, now the Suicide Squad is under the power of Lex Luthor and not the government. It's not Amanda Waller answering for the government. It's Lex Luthor doing shady things with this team that used to be elsewhere. But Ted's like, wait, what's Ted's goal? Why is he doing this? Like, there's questions.
It seemed like the Max Lord reveal. You know what I mean? Like, that's the next best thing I could think of, is when Max Lord is revealed to be behind the LEOMACS stuff, and
Ted Cord,
Infinite Crisis.
Ted Cord becoming Maxwell Lord is an interesting dynamic to play with.
No, it is.
I'm sure that's an intentional choice as well.
I think so too, and the fact that if the way that he sees this, where Max Lord was like, these superheroes are ruining the planet, I'm gonna take it back using my telepathy and LEOMACS, versus Ted Cord going like, No, this is a project that there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in. I think it makes that dynamic to where he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's just tied up in something, and now he has a target on him.
And something really interesting is, Ted mentions here, he has some highly effective friends he can send after them.
Yeah.
Judging by the next time hint, Batman.
Yeah,
Batman is the friend he's sending after them.
Yeah, at that point, like, okay, does Batman understand what Ted's doing? Is there actually like a reasonable explanation for it that actually the heroes would be on side with?
It's possible, or it's more just, hey, the Suicide Squad got out of hand.
Yeah.
And Batman's like, well, sure, they're all villains. I'll go and they escaped that leash. Can you go and help out?
But look who's running with the Revolution, right? So the Revolutionaries, as far as people tell in the DC universe, go up and stir shit up, right? And they ended up with the Suicide Squad, as far as they know. But look who else is running with them now. It's Deadshot, Harley, Captain Boomerang. That doesn't necessarily, to the general public, make the Revolutionaries look like
it's completely tarnished
on the side of the Angels,
image, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Right. And so, of course, if Ted's like, hey, Bruce, Harley and Deadshot are out stirring up trouble with these revolutionaries. We had them and they got out. Of course, he's going to side with his longtime buddy.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't he? Yeah. So I love how complex this is. Taylor has made this simple reveal. And I think maybe I'm just reading too much into it as a DC Comics continuity.
No, I don't think you are. I think this is wonderfully intricate, and I feel like in 5 issues he's packed more like good character development mixed with stories that it's had genuine reveals and surprising moments throughout, to the point where it's on a different level. Like, there's a reason why we sit and like talk about Tom Taylor, and it's funny because a lot of the other Tom Taylor stuff that I really like, it's not even about the like twists and turns. It's just really good character work where I really care about what the characters are going through. So the choices they make, the decisions that they make, and the overall arcs they have are really impactful. It's what we talked about last time with Deceased and Killables issue 3. That's why that was so good, and it played into the history of DC Universe on top of that. This is doing something completely different where, I mean, there's a lot about history there, and we're talking about history that's maybe playing with the Ted Kord stuff, but ultimately here we're talking about just how many balls he's juggling this basically without ever feeling like he's actually struggling, to the point where it feels like a masterclass in writing.
I think it's impressive at how much he manages to work on at the same time and all be this high quality. Because obviously we've had Deceased, when he was writing this, we'll have had Deceased, maybe the start of the digital one, this. Within a couple of issues, we'll be getting to, okay, he'll be writing the script for whatever this book he's teasing is. That's like a good amount of ongoing stuff that he's doing every month.
Well, plus he has a creator-owned thing coming out that all his friends are tweeting out, which I'm going to check out because it is Tom Taylor.
This is the one from Boom, I think. The seven
something seven.
Seven Secrets.
There you go.
And but like I remember you guys talking up All New Wolverine, right? And when I started reading, I was like, this is good. And then I got to Enemy of the State 2, where it just completely takes over and it plays with those emotions. And this issue really reminded me of what worked there, where it's not exactly what you think is going on, and he still pulls you. Like, I care more about Jog in this one issue than I have about Barry Allen in I can't tell you how long, right?
Exactly.
The only thing is they're both speedsters that want to do good, right? Like,
I mean, that's irrelevant. It's just good writing. That's all. As you can compare it to any character.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I really care about Barry Allen, right? Like, I'm jumping back into Flash because of, not because of the writing. And
in spite of the writing.
Right. Yet here, this character that I have zero ties to, just the way that Taylor handled him, I'm now sad that he's gone. Like, I was like, I want more of him. So
that's the pros and cons of a Suicide Squad book, I guess.
Yeah, right. And it's lining up on everything he said, where he's like, "Don't get attached." Right? He warned us.
No, he did. He was very fair. He said I distinctly remember him saying the team at the end of the second issue isn't necessarily everyone who was there in the first issue, and by the end of the arc, it will feel very fresh again. And I remember him saying that when the book launched, and it's true.
Yeah, if I was getting into comics at this point, this feels weirdly Johnsian. And I know that's weird to say because he's not really playing with continuity, but it is fresh. So he's taking these things like Ted Kord, and that's a very to me, Jeff Johns things to do. Like, look what he did with Max Lord.
Just
I mean, that was him and
insanely
Rocha.
nice.
Yeah, so I would be totally, if this might have been the book that got me into comics, like some of the John stuff did. So, yeah, good showing out of Tom Taylor.
Yeah, obviously we mentioned the art here or there as we were going through the story, but it is also very good. That's why I'd say not ignore that aspect of it, because it is wonderful.
Some fantastic ones. And I think I mentioned this on like every issue of the squad, but Adriana Lucas deserves a special shout out for the colors being spectacular on this book and making it what it is. Like that panel with the Jog's head explosion, that boom, those colors are absolutely sublime.
And like, there's two well, I mean, it's not really head explosion with Locke, right? But they're both head trauma, and they're both played very differently. And I think a lot of that is the colors and the.
I actually think the Jog head explosion works even better because Locke's head splattering is covered up with the with the censorship logo. And by having that there, you're like, oh, okay, we're not allowed to really show that. There's limits. And then you get to the head explosion, and there's nothing. It's just it basks in the moment of how horrific this is.
Well, I mean, the contrast says a lot. It's almost like, this is a character you're happy to see die. So, so you get the fun kind of goofy kind of take on it, even though it's kind of a shocking moment because Deadshot just made this choice. But then you get to this moment with Jog, and instead it basks in the humanity of it and the actual human connection to it, and it treats it more seriously. So that contrast is wonderful. But yeah, that is issue 5. We're only 5 issues into this book, but it's already wonderful, this run. Matt, what are you giving Suicide Squad issue 5?
You guys ready? I'm giving it a 10.
You gave the last Tom Taylor about a 10, Matt.
Sorry, I like Tom Taylor.
Connor.
I mean, it's excellent. I'm gonna give it a 9. But, I mean, that feels bad now after Matt, but it's not. God damn it.
No. But still, too, I read this. When did I get my books? I get them on Wednesday, so I must have read this Thursday, and it was the opposite of what I was talking about in Flash, where I was just like, oh man, Tom Taylor, this book, it put me in a good mood.
I read the comics today, but this was the first day I read because I was like, oh, that needs to be my priority book. When I looked at my list.
Yeah, I waited till I had this in physical to read it. Like, I could have read it on Tuesday as soon as it came out, like I did with other stuff digitally. But I like, no, I'm only buying this physically. That's it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I read this first too. This was the when I looked at what I had, I was like, oh wait, no, that's first. Of course that's first. I was going to give this a 9, just because I can't give everything he does a 10. I have to have some sort of variance to what the...
And that's fine. I might... Hey, the digital first, I might only give an 8.5 to. Who knows?
Oh, so harsh, man. Pull your punches.
I know.
So, there you go. That's Suicide Squad issue 5. Supergirl issue 41, of course, is the first of the last 2 issues that are digital only. Jody Houser writing, of course, with Rachael Stott on the art, which is the same as what the previous issues have been. So it was kind of weird getting into this because it was like, okay, so we've kind of finished that tie-in stuff to the Batman Who Laughs. What is these last 2 in their own going to be? It turns out that it's kind of an epilogue to that, where Supergirl is kind of like suffering the trauma of what she went through. She's still kind of seeing Batman Who Laughs in her head, and the bulk of the issue is her helping out during this hurricane and having these little moments where Batman Who Laughs will kind of like speak to her in her head and kind of sort of say, hey, like you're part of chaos, you're not this good person. She's also sort of reuniting with Crypto and going to save people who are trapped in their houses in Florida, and generally, really, again, much like a lot of these Houser issues, it's very sort of quick, easy read, fairly pretty to look at, nice bold colors.
Yeah, Stott's art, it's pretty good. Although there's a couple nitpicks coming up from it, but I'm not gonna, I'm gonna try to enjoy these as much as I can.
That was kind of consistent from before, is that it was pretty good with some nitpicks. That's kind of been Stott's art for the last.
So it's been a while, so sure, I'm gonna defer to you on that one, remembering, if that's what we're saying, but it's definitely, kind of back to it.
I think the general consensus between us was always that occasionally the faces weren't amazing, but the action and the flow of the action always look great.
Yeah. I'll say this: Stott's crypto looks fantastic just about every time you see him.
And you know, I actually
so it's
think
pretty
the
good.
giant Batman who laughs in the cloud when she's flying back with the food supplies for the girl who's in the house on her own
Yep.
actually looks suitably different from the rest of the art, but also really good. It's actually one of my favorite like appearances of Batman who laughs, oddly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, you're pretty limited on that.
It just looks it's good. But she brings this stuff back to the to the girl who's sort of looking after her little sister, and they don't want to leave because they're worried their parents might come back because they're concerned they might, you know, or maybe they did actually just die in a plane crash.
Right.
They're coming back. And as the book ends, this there's a tease in the middle of this, but basically this army general shows up in essentially a Lexo suit. Basically, Supergirl is seen as a threat now by the military because of everything she did when she was under the effect of the Batman Who Laughs.
Right.
So getting into this final issue, we have kind of the final comeuppance for her, or the final threat because of it, is that her public, you know, credit has dwindled.
It's been hurt. So no, yeah, it was pretty good. It's just it sucks that it's a downer because Supergirl's ending.
Yeah.
And you know, so
I think the worst part is that, I mean, this arc with her being infected and this little epilogue to it's fine. It's been generally enjoyable for what it is. I think Taylor's done a good job of not making it this chore that just feels like a tacked on tie-in. But it is kind of a shame that that's the last arc of the book. Like, you know, we've got this 42 issue series, and the last arc is just all related to this thing. As good or not as it might be, which is for the most part good, I would say. But yeah, so that's kind of a shame. And you know, I wish Hauser would get like a nice long run on something. I feel like she keeps coming in to do these one-off arcs on things.
Yeah,
it's never like here's like a proper 30-40 issue run on something.
I wonder what Hauser's Justice League would look like.
Oh, I don't
know. Yeah, I think that'd be real fun. Yeah,
I mean, I'd be into it. You know, it's solid. Like I say, very very quick read. A lot of swishing around the houses during the hurricane, and you know, I enjoyed the joke where she flies off to like not a local supermarket because obviously the local ones are all closed for the hurricane, but she flies off to a different state just to swoop in, get some food, and leaves the money. And you know, just the simple little thing of the lettering not having any punctuation because she's saying this at super speed on her way out, and the cashier's just kind of like, whoa, whoosh.
Yeah. Well, and I like too that this is Supergirl versus self-doubt. So in those quiet moments in between, we see her doing stuff. It's her thinking about like Krypton and all the other stuff that's gone wrong in her life that's led her up here, and how she's viewing that. And it's almost like the infection has colored that to be different than what it was before, and almost like she's seeing it negatively. But no, like it's pretty good. Like I don't have too many complaints.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I will just leave it there. I don't have to drag it out beyond what it needs. What you giving it?
How many of the 7.5?
Yeah, I think it's a solid 7. I think I was a little concerned at first. I was like, we're just in a random hurricane thing. Like, what is this in relation to anything? You know, we just got this 2-part hurricane story at the end. But then once it started bringing her doubt and like her still sort of recovering from the Batman Who Laughs, I was like, okay, all right, it's actually more of an epilogue to the previous story that makes sense given everything she was doing in that story. It makes sense she'd have some time recuperating and getting over it. So, yeah, I'll give it just a straight 7. I think it's, you know, solid 7, which is good. If nothing spectacular. So. There you go. That is Supergirl.
Girl.
Yes, I was a dramatic pause, Matt.
Gotcha. I thought you forgot how to say girl.
No danger. Basket Full of Heads, issue 7, the final issue in the series, this miniseries. Joe Hill writing, of course, with LEOMACS on the art. And we get the final tale here, which ultimately boils down to June getting out of her drowning predicament with the axe, coming up and seeking vengeance on the sheriff, and basically finding out that her boyfriend is still kind of a shithead. He didn't do exactly what they said he did, but he's still a bit of a shithead.
But he wasn't as clean as she thought she was. So I got a question for you guys. Was this a victim of expectations?
A little bit.
Okay.
I thought this was extremely straightforward and just, it's the ending, and it's kind of exactly what it needed to be, but it didn't go above and beyond.
Yeah, very expositional, right? Like,
I felt that about the back half of this book in general. Actually, I thought the first issues were fantastic mood pieces and this really artful storytelling, and then it shifted into being a lot of exposition.
Like, it's not a bad issue, but this is the first thing I read on Tuesday. Like, I could not wait to see how this ends, and it was fine, but it went a little bit too conventional, and just like it was everything that I thought it was gonna be. I mean, with the exception of the boyfriend and that little bit of a twist, you know.
I mean, I don't know what I was expecting or not expecting. I quite liked the last issue. There was definitely that one issue that was very expositional that I'll agree on. But this one, like, the art in the first half when she's escaping the water and even when she's like using the axe on the sheriff is wonderful. I loved it. She decides not to cut his head off in this case. She cuts him sort of diagonally from the shoulder down to the sort of lower stomach. And he's like, I'm not dead. Why am I not dead? Kill me. And she's like, maybe in a minute. My arm's tired. Let him, lie there suffering.
That was pretty good. And I like too the when she goes to rescue her boyfriend, and he's like, he noticed that she's missing a thumb, and he's missing a pinky, and he's like, oh, look at us, still fated to be. And I'm still like, oh man, look at. And then because the sheriff's not dead, he starts spilling the beans on the boyfriend, and I was like, oh, this is something that only a magic axe that doesn't,
I did like the mythological reason for the axe.
Yeah, so I brought this up in our chat 2 weeks ago, or last week, I forget which book it was in, but I was thumbing through, maybe it was Dollhouse, and at the end, they have the sea, what is it, Sea Dogs? Yeah, there was the origin of the axe in Sea Dogs, where the Vikings had come to North America, and they were going after the Native American tribes, and they had this axe that would bring life, not death, and it was super cool. And I was like, I wonder if this is going to tie into Basketful of Heads. Well, and through that, it's because they had killed this Native American tribe that another tribe got together with their shaman and cursed them to become werewolves. So that was pretty cool. And that's where that ties in.
It doesn't sound like it contradicts this, at least.
No,
because the explanation this is the axe that cut Odin down from Yggdrasil.
Yep.
But when they did, it went into Yggdrasil a touch, and that's what gave it its powers.
So it doesn't, even though it's an axe, it brings life, not death, upon what it does. So yeah, I like that a lot, and I like the sheriff being kind of like, oh, it's just a Nordic myth. Like, it doesn't mean, but as he's in half,
yeah.
Like, come on, bro.
I really liked, because I think she cuts her boyfriend's head off, right, and sort of gives him his or she doesn't even give it to him. She sort of gives him the supplies to have his Viking funeral at sea because they're on a boat. So
I did love that.
He sets it on fire. And she goes out to the bridge, and this is kind of where we started the story back in issue 1. It's her out on the bridge, and then obviously now we have the context of this girl who's thingied, and who killed herself, and that was kind of the backstory, and that's the one that the boyfriend let die and all the rest of it. And we have the housekeeper pull up, and she sort of recognizes her and says, hey, and we find out this housekeeper, because of what happened to this girl that this family basically used and threw out, and it led to her suicide. She actually is the informant. She's the one who was recording stuff for the feds. And we find out, her name Ellie is the LE. So the son, the cop's son, was an idiot and heard LE and thought it was the initials, and that happened to match up with the boyfriend. So that was an amusing little touch. But I did kind of like this, because I actually thought that it was maybe going to go really dark here, where she was going to jump. Like, I genuinely thought that everything she's went through on this night has been so traumatic that maybe she will jump.
I have to say, it never once even led me the impression that was going to happen. Like, I never once even crossed my mind that she would do that. And maybe that's a flaw in the storytelling for me, in that I never believed that was a possibility at the end.
Oh no, it was but I was going like, she's this axe and this island has tainted her so much that she can't, like, this family, just like with the girl, right? She's gonna find the ultimate fate, and then here comes the savior. And I like that she talks her off the ledge. And it's someone that worked within the family and saw how nasty they were when no one else did. So I liked that she was always privy to the truth, and she was actually doing something about it. Unlike the boyfriend who just kept taking the paycheck, and he was able to buy her the ring.
I like this stuff, but just to go back with Carson, I don't think you can call it a flaw in the storytelling. I mean, I know you said for you at the end, but in this context, I don't know if that really applies. Like, either it works or it doesn't, and I think the fact that two of us felt the possibility that this is what it was setting up at the end, for me means
that's why I've very intentionally quantified for me. I'm not saying this is bad, they're badly written. I'm not saying that. I said it was a flaw for me. So it didn't land for me in that regard.
Oh, it didn't land for you, but I take umbrage with the word flaw. I think flaw is kind of the wrong word for the context.
It feels like a flaw to me because it didn't. It never gave me that impression. It
didn't work for him, and that's. I guess that's fine, but it worked for me and you, Pete. So like I can see where he's coming from.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is that a flaw is what causes the thing that doesn't work. The thing that works at the end result is not the flaw itself. Does that make sense?
Okay, the flaw for me though here is that I didn't think there was anything in the writing or the art that made me think that she was going to. So it's for me it's a flaw that it didn't give me that impression.
I think this is on you, because the second she's on that bridge, the second I saw her walking towards the bridge, I immediately got worried. Like, the first thing I thought of is that she's going to jump because of what she's been through.
Fair enough. Maybe this is on me. I'm not saying that the book's bad. Especially for whatever reason, it didn't strike me.
But especially when you tie it to the maniacal laughter before, when she's listening to the music, and she's laughing because the tape says police evidence on it. It's just a song. Like, I don't know. For me, it was, I got this bad feeling the second I saw her walking onto that bridge, and for me, it kind of recontextualized what this story is that the whole thing's been about her believing that her boyfriend can't be this bad thing. That every step along the way, he started off being this perfect boyfriend in issue 1, and then he was taken away, and everything's been about trying to like convince her that he's actually this bad guy, that something's bad. It's been about getting to the boyfriend, and then not believing that he's done these horrible things. And ultimately, he's just kind of, not maybe as bad, but he's kind of fallen into the same trappings as the family, where he's willing to let the other half kind of like die and just take the benefits for himself, and that he's kind of just like them. And she's ultimately almost a victim, like this other girl was, to that negligence, to those just malicious, like parasitical kind of like entities.
Yeah, the island's been rotting, because we see how I mean, for whatever reason from the beginning I thought that the cops had something to do with it, but I didn't think it went all the way up to the sheriff. So like this is an island that is so corrupt that really the only thing that helped bring it down was a mystical Viking axe, right? Like, well, that's
the tool. But I mean, the story is really about this young woman kind of changing it all, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, because what I like about it is the housekeeper got to save this person. She didn't let, but she saw what happened to the previous one and has felt guilty about it and wanted to do something for it, and had a chance here to save someone else. So for me, all the story beats kind of fell into place, and it kind of contextualized what the story's actually been about.
Yeah, it was just a little bit more straightforward than I was expecting for the ending to be. Like, despite the twist of the boyfriend. And then the housekeeper.
It falls down to, when I was reading this, it kind of ended up feeling conventional, and it had lost a lot of that unique feeling that I felt the first half of this series really had.
I'm wondering if it's going to read and trade, though, too.
It's possible.
This could just feel like the epilogue.
I wonder how much of this is just between issues. You thinking up of where this is going and what it actually is, and.
Well, see, that's the thing. I didn't actually have any like ideas of what it was going to do. It's more the tone shifted from this, that brooding horror and fear in those first few issues of and mystery of everything, and to the second half being a lot of exposition, and just the answers often not being
forget about
super interesting.
I disagree with the interesting part, but forget about the exposition, because I agree that at least one of the issues was too exposition-y. I think why this works is the whole point of it is that it starts off feeling like a traditional horror movie, but then the actual horror is a lot more real. It's a lot more realistic. I mean, you've got the supernatural acts, but the actual horror is more about people being taken advantage of, about the rich taking advantage of this young woman. Like,
I get that. I feel like the I don't think I can just forget it being exposition-y, because I don't think it is just that one issue. I think it's been every issue since that has felt really exposition to me. Even this,
Well,
the
no,
final,
I'm not saying forget. I'm not saying forget that complaint. I'm not saying that's an invalid complaint if that's how you felt. I'm saying in the context of talking about the tone shift, that's not the tone. We're not talking about tone. We were talking about it being too exposition-y. That's something different.
Okay. I guess in that regard, then I didn't feel the shift was a natural shift of the story for me. It felt really jarring and sudden, and just it never gelled together properly with the first half for me.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think this final issue improved the story for the most part. I agree. The one in the prison cell where the son, the sheriff's son, was sort of telling the story was a bit too much, just packed in, like him explaining all this stuff in one go. But I do actually think the recontextualization of what this story's actually been about, and this is the thing where I feel like if this wasn't like month to month, like getting the individual chapters, this is one that actually might play better as a movie in one sitting, as it were, where you start off this way and then it sort of gradually throughout the story shifts towards this thing instead. I think that subversion's kind of part of the point. So now, for me, this worked. I actually appreciate that this didn't go deep into mythology. I'm kind of glad that this was one out of the Hill House books that didn't go into.
I didn't need it to go into mythology and like weird stuff necessarily. I think it was just, like I say, the tone shift didn't feel natural to me, and so I didn't buy the shift because of that. So it kind of just felt very disconnected and underwhelming due to that.
I guess I just disagree. I think this final issue improved the story. So
I feel like I'm somewhere in between you guys. I was a bit disappointed where it goes, but it was still good. It's just like, it's that thing where whatever you have it building to be, like I expected it to, like kind of like Dollhouse Family, the way that ended. And I was like, oh man, that felt very fulfilling. This didn't, to me, feel quite as fulfilling, but there's stuff in there that I really liked, that like the repeated theme of the bridge, right? That bridge is kind of the family's undoing, right? Because it led to the girl's death. That led to the investigations, that led to the boyfriend having June stay there through the storm and whatnot, that kind of ended up being there. And it's the one way in and out of the town, or the island.
Even just that last visual when you get to the final page and she's in the car with the housekeeper, they drive past the police going in the other direction. That's kind of the ending of it, as dawn is rising. And in fact, the last line's even, the sun's coming up, sooner or later it always does, kind of thing. So it's this choice to leave this behind and move on. I think the storytelling is actually really strong. So, no.
I think just not just about this book in general, but it has me on a very personal level now concerned about Joe Hill comics, and maybe they're not necessarily for me, in the sense that between the back half of this feeling really exposition-y for me, and how I felt about the last issue, especially of Plunge. Thank you.
The one that was better than issue 2, yes.
Well, again, for me, we saw this last week. For me, it felt very exposition-y, and it lost a lot of the impact and feeling and the mood of the previous issues. And that's kind of been my problem with the back half of this book, is that lack of that mood and things that got me interested in the first place felt like it faded. And if they're working for you, that's great. Keep enjoying them. But that's a pattern now that okay, there's 2 things in a row that I've had this feeling from Joe Hill that has me worried that maybe it's not for me in the future.
Did either of you read Lock and Key?
No.
I'm sure this has come up before. I own almost all of it on Comixology and I've never read it.
But I didn't know if you started. That's why I asked. But I wonder if you're listening and you have, is this a problem? Is this like the thing that Joe Hill does where he sets a mood and then gets away with it to do a more traditional storytelling? Because I don't feel like that would Plunge.
It's a problem. And maybe for everyone it's not a problem.
For Plunge, I would say it gets more traditional. If anything, that book gets weirder. The more it's revealed.
So I don't know about that, but like, and again, I really enjoyed this issue. It just wasn't the twisty, turny type stuff that we were getting, and it almost felt like this was just the end tag. Like if the issues were like a couple pages more, it still could have been 6 issues. Like I almost feel like this was a little bit too, I don't want to say bloated because it's not bloated, but this still could have been 6 issues for whatever reason, and they went with 7. That's just it. So
yeah, I wouldn't say bloated at all.
No,
I don't think that I wouldn't even use that word either.
no, and that's why I don't want to. But it feels like this still could have been 6 issues, but for whatever reason he adjusted the story and made it into 7. Because I remember, wasn't it solicited as 6
originally?
It definitely was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever happened. But I want to just keep reiterating. I did enjoy it. It still features a Viking axe made. That's origins tied to Yggdrasil. How do I not love it? And then when you look at the design on the blade, it was like you look at it facing up. It's like, oh yeah, that's Yggdrasil. Like I'm staring at me at the face the whole time. So no, I liked it.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about the axe. I just give a shit about the human story. But but and the atmosphere. I love the atmosphere. No, I really enjoyed Basketful of Heads, and Plunge is still kind of up there for me in terms of the books. But and part of that is that they do have 2 of the better art teams as well out of the books too, for my taste.
It helps
so
when you have Eminem and then LEOMACS on this one.
Hard to argue with the art.
Yeah, this still felt very 70s slashery, even in the end. So you give them credit for that. They kept that tone throughout.
Matt, what are you giving it?
I'm just gonna give it an 8.
Connor?
6.5 from me.
I would go with 8.5. So there you go. That is Basketful of Heads, issue 7. Lolo Woods, issue 5, the penultimate issue. It's another Hill House book. Carmen Maria Machado writing with Dani strips on the art. This is, I mean, if anything, I suppose technically this is the exposition issue of this one. This is the full backstory.
Big time. This is the first time that I felt that you could tell Machado is a novelist.
Do you know what I'll say though? This series, with how weird and out there it's been, needed an exposition issue.
True. I just feel like I read this before bed last night, which probably wasn't the best time to read it, because I felt like it just kept going and going, and so I maybe needed to read it with fresher eyes. But I don't know if I necessarily liked all the explanations.
Well, what's interesting is that
needed.
Thematically, this and Basketful of Heads are actually hitting a lot of the same themes. It's just that this book from issue 1 was really kind of shoving them in your face, whereas Basketful of Heads was more about, okay, let's start off as a typical horror story and then kind of weave them in as we go. Whereas this, all the things we were kind of speculating about them losing time, we find out, no, there's straight up men in this town who use this magic water that makes them forget, whatever period of time, depending on how much you give them, to using it to sexually assault people. That's clearly what's been happening. And this witch character was almost assaulted, was saved by a patient of this nearby hospital that is for people's what does she call it again? Sanatorium, a place for people.
Yeah, it's a sanatorium, and they put women there that don't conform, right?
Yeah.
So this lady that saved her identified as a witch, so of course her family put them there.
But they mention also gay people are sent in there. Anyone who, for the time period especially, was seen as being
anyone
different.
that doesn't conform to that, classical archetype and whatever, and that they force feed them the water to make them forget who they are. And so there's a lot of themes of forcing people to be what they're not, and it really goes into the history behind that. And
so you've got this dark opening then of this attempted assault, and her, I mean, you don't see much. It's just like a shadowy figure. It's just done kind of tastefully, but her telling this story is quite dark. And then the big twist of the issue is because later on, once her mother dies and this woman who's rescued her becomes kind of her aunt in the real world, and they find this alternative source that will give you your memories back, this alternative natural magical thing,
the mushroom
which is mushrooms.
She gives she takes the mushrooms, and the horror twist of it is, for the character here, is that this attempted assault wasn't the first time. It had been happening repeatedly, and this was just the time that she got away. This was the time that it got interrupted and intervened by this other person. And all of a sudden, all these memories of all these horrible things. So we get this talk here towards the end of the issue where, like, all these women who are losing time, and that the men who use this in the town are so blatant about it. They don't even put people back in their beds. They just that's why people, because we back in this show, I remember talking about, why are they waking up in random places? It sounds sinister, but we don't know exactly the context of this.
Right. It was all there. We just needed the context, and so slowly, Machado gives them these, and that's why I feel it feels like a novelist, where there's stuff in chapter 1 that you can look at, and then when you know this, you look back at it and go, oh.
And then there's the moral dilemma here of like everyone should know what's happened to them, but giving people, like flooding them with these memories of these horrible assaults all at once,
at one time,
would make them go insane, basically.
Yeah, it'd be horrific. And the idea that the men built up this mystery around the town, right? By like, this is a legend. This is something that happens to everyone. That everyone knows that. Oh yeah, women.
It all happens to the women.
No memories. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Everyone. It happens to everyone. By doing that, they kind of stopped people questioning it.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, of course, we find out that some of the creatures that we've been seeing, not the skinned men, that's like the perpetrators from the time. This is what the witch did to them. But the sort of deer-like creatures and the bunny-like creatures, they're actually some of the women who couldn't live with the memories they'd got back. And she gave them this kind of like existence, which the girls are kind of like weirded by. Like, is that necessarily the right thing to do? They're not sure, but
rightly weirded.
Yeah.
Like, you want to give them peace and whatnot, but at the same time, maybe turning them into scary creatures
there's
and having them haunt the forest
made by giving them their memories back and then offering them the water freely, being like, do you want to take this and forget it again, or do you want to live with the memory? And I think that would have probably been the ideal solution.
And this then, so obviously you've got the conformity aspect of it as well, which brings in all these other themes, but you have kind of this cliffhanger at the end. And you also have the idea that, our two main characters did wake up in the theater in that first issue. Like, what happened to them there? Right. Was it sexual? Was it something else? What's going on? But we end with this weird cliffhanger where it's Octavia's girlfriend that she's had this issue during the series. She's went to this thing to hang out with some of the guys, and we actually end in this cliffhanger where they basically know that they're probably going to assault her and whoever else goes to this thing. Well, that's going to be what happens at this party. And they're racing off at the end. So we actually have more of an action cliffhanger than I would have expected from this book, but it does work in the context of what we've discovered about what happens in this town. It's a very dark story with a very sort of supernatural twist that is so like this is not worried about being subtle or pulling punches. This is very much just the stark reality of this horrible thing that's happening. And I think the point of it is how much like real things and sometimes in real life feel like they should have been like spoken about. People should have known. People should have spoke up. I mean, it's easy to bring up an example like Weinstein, like how many people kind of knew something was going on and never said anything. I think it's kind of like not a metaphor, but like a representation of that kind of idea, that ideology. Like, I mean, how many people in the town have a sense that something's going on, aren't taking part themselves necessarily, but maybe have an inkling that something's going on, but just don't question it because they don't want to shake the boat or anything like that.
And so there's Heaven on Earth, which is the resort that got closed down. And doesn't Elle's dad, didn't he used to work there?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the other element as well, is that there was guards at this place that knew about this and were letting people come in and use the water. Yeah.
But and not that he was privy to it, but maybe he found something that's why now he's on disability, right? Because he is. It's been a while since I've because of the issues between. Like, it's not like he's sick with something, right? It's he can't work, right?
Yeah. I don't remember specifically what it was, but yeah, maybe this is something where he made a choice because of something that he found. Yeah.
And that's what I am thinking, that like you were talking about the Weinstein stuff, that people that do speak out against people with power, they end up having to pay a price for it. And that's why it takes so long for justice to be sought. And I'm wondering if that's part of it, is now that she's seen this with her dad and whatnot. And that's what makes her more prone to fight it. Like, I don't know if there's something innate in that family, because they're different as well, right? Like both of them, they're not only that they're homosexual, right? But they're both women of color, and this middle America town of Shudder to Think, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and
know.
on top of that, they also have this weird supernatural connection, just to the icing on the
Right.
cake, right?
Yeah.
Right. So like everything's on there for them that they're So no, it's really, really good. I just, as I'm reading this, really, really tired, and getting all the explanations at one time.
Do you know,
Kind of
I will agree.
it hit me all at once.
I will agree
you
that
know.
it felt a bit long-winded in the middle. There's the middle portion of the book when the witch is telling the story. There's a lot of like how she like met this woman, which obviously is important, but how she kind of grew to be friends with her, learned to do some magic, and then how she introduced her mother to her, and then her mother went away or died, and then this woman took care of her. Like there was a lot of steps to that I felt you could have condensed a bit into just kind of
Yeah, that's true.
But this is also that first book that I remember not being that thrilled with the first issue, but the more I talked about it with you guys, the more I came around to it. And that's kind of the theme of this book, is the more that we can, I don't want to say pick it apart, but decompress it.
Break it down.
And break it down.
fact,
the more,
I mean, again, this was more in your face with it, but at the same time, it's kind of one element that's kind of similar to Basketful of Heads is that it's got this supernatural weird horror thing where all these weird things are happening, but ultimately once we get down to it and we find out what's going on, the actual real scary part is actually really very real and very
it's the men.
It's a town that's been corrupted by these men doing horrible things, and it's just become part of that town's culture,
and they want to maintain it. They don't want it to change. They want to keep it in power, and so on.
And that society, that's the struggle of society, right? With these people that get the positions of power, they don't want to let it go, so they start finding less than legal means, I guess, to keep consolidating it. And now you have our two heroes, who are two people that have been affected by it and who aren't part of that system. They're outsiders just by their own personal choices and who they were born as.
Yeah,
it's a really nice
if there's
way that stories coming together.
If there's a Venn diagram of everything like these people in power hate, these two like they're squarely in the middle of it.
Venn diagram.
They're right in the middle of all of it. So it's
on the actual storytelling of this issue, the functional narrative. It is a lot of exposition. I feel like it works better than some other exposition issues that we've had. Not even right away, just in general on this show. In that it's not a lot of people sitting around talking, even though that's what the narration is. The visuals of the art is really going through this story in a unique manner, and I feel like I'm getting a lot of.
It feels
it's not show and not tell. It's definitely telling a lot, but it's also showing me a lot of interesting things.
It feels like a really stereotypical like flashback sequence in a movie where they sort of dress it up with a little bit of style, but it's like
it is, but I think the art is unique enough that the style of that flashback essentially.
What is going on in that page with the hawk and the rabbit and the eyes? And it is a mess. No, I know, but again, I talked about earlier. The more you stare at this thing, the more it doesn't make sense, and the more troubling it is. That's that image. The more I stare at it, the more I start looking at the different pieces of it, and it just. I get overwhelmed, and I feel that's the intention of it.
Yeah, because that's the page of her remembering, right?
Right.
So that is this overwhelming. It's all these things crashing into her head at once, and you're like there. It looks like a cacophonous mess of stuff going on, but it really works because it's such a striking image. And while it's a mess, it's very clear. I think really strong coloring really breaks down the segments. Like you've got the general face at the top, then you've got the head sticking out the top in the pink with the gazebos, and then you've got the orange face in hair flowing. You've got the eyes with the white, the green on the teacup. All these elements really pop out individually to form this cohesive whole of this messy image with all these individual parts that really well form just to look at individually.
Yeah. And there's, as I'm unpacking it a little bit more too, there's something about this was the lady that they would send them to if you want something to remember. Yet now she's told the people that might do something about it. So how many people has she told the story to that just kind of were resigned to their fates and didn't do anything? Yet our two heroes.
I don't know how many she's told the story to and how many she just gives them the water to forget because it's what they want, what they need.
Right. And that's what I mean. Like, Is it that now she's told them because these are two people that'll do something about it? Or she told other people and the corruption's so bad that these are just the next two? It's kind of like the Matrix, right? When you get to the end, there's always a new version of Neo.
Whoa, whoa,
You
whoa,
know?
whoa, 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 whoa.
What?
I take umbrage with that reference. It's not like the Matrix. That's the Matrix sequels. The original Matrix had nothing to do with that nonsense.
Okay, whatever.
And I get where Matt's
That's mythological, right? That's
aside. I
right.
think the rest
It's just
comparison was fair.
thank you. Is this just the cycle re-going, or is this the cycle finally going to be broken? Right? As like again, who she told this to? We know that this is who the moms, they know when you want to forget something, go see the witch, or if you want to remember something, right? They know about the mushrooms, or at least
that was from
well,
what I remember, was a really interesting twist last issue that they
right.
sent to the witch to remember things, but
Right.
remembering's harder. So she actually just gave them the water to make them forget that they wanted to remember something.
Right. So
again,
yeah.
which is her taking away that choice from them.
Right.
I assume. I don't know. Maybe I'm being
right. Well, and and there's a thread of PTSD and survivor's guilt and all this other stuff that's going through. There's a lot of psychological stuff going on here, even to the fact from, and again, I'm no expert, but from things that I've read about how victims of sexual assault, if they're real young, that's kind of their mentality that they're stuck with the rest of their life. So the fact that this girl never ages, she's always the age of the assault, that's powerful. And that's all here on the page, and it just takes a little bit to get going.
It really comes together. Like, I think it's a dense read, this issue, especially more so than any other issue of this series.
Yeah.
But there is so much in there that is fascinating. That I kind of almost give it a pass because there is so much to unpack. It's not just meaningless fluff. It's not just words for the sake of it. There's a lot of actual stuff going on in the dense amount of words that there is.
The backstory of the town, the backstory of the witch, they all tie together. Yeah. And I am actively rooting for our heroes. Like if this ends in a horror way where it's all futile and it's nothing, I'm gonna be so mad.
Take the water after all because it just got so bad, which would be a valid ending. Like it wouldn't feel like keep out of nowhere, but it would be really disappointing not because it would be a bad ending, but disappointing because I want them to be better. Yeah, and like as of the end of issue 5, I'm rooting for our heroines to go in there with baseball bats and start kneecapping dudes, right? Because that's the only way to deal with them. I'm sorry, like but yeah, that's what I want to see. Is that probably going to happen? No, because that's not the mature way to deal with problems. I've been told. So
I've been told.
Yeah, I had to lighten it up. I had to lighten it up a little bit. This got heavy.
So, yeah, no, I like the issue quite a bit. I like everything it's doing, and I like what it reveals. I do think I agree with Matt, it felt longer than it was, and I think that does fundamentally mean that something in the writing wasn't as smooth as that maybe it could have been. So I do think that's a valid complaint to make. Because I actually questioned at one point, is this a regular 22-page book?
Yeah.
I actually was questioning, is this like an extra size one? And it wasn't. And that wasn't even near the end. I thought that was like right in the middle, where it was right in the middle of all the flashback stuff. So clearly, there's maybe a complaint to be had there, but everything it's doing in terms of what it's setting up and what it's hitting at in the story now is, and I was excited by the cliffhanger. Like, I was like, no, go off and save people, kind of thing. So, all right, Matt, what are you giving Little Woods?
8.5.
Connor.
8.5 from me as well.
Yeah, I'll go with straight 8. Like I say, felt a bit long, but it wasn't. So, there you go. Right, so we got did anyone read digital first books this week? Was that a thing?
No, I did, but I'll let you guys get to your Patreon books just because
I didn't really get to any because
books are back.
I don't know what I did this week.
Well, and that's it. There's so many that I almost handicapped myself, being like, no, I'm gonna read Superman and Swamp Thing still, and then oh man, there's Flash, and Russell's Batman, and it was overwhelming. So I read a couple of them, but not all of them. I did read The Flash by Jeff Parker, and it wasn't what I thought it would be. It just felt like they put 2 annual stories together, and it didn't have that same vibe as the Simone stuff, which is disappointing.
That is not a rain endorsement. It just feels like an annual.
Well, no, they like one of them's Gorilla Grodd taking over the minds of Congress, and they're gonna send him to war with Canada. Which Barry's like, no one goes to war with Canada. What is going on? So he goes there and fights Gorilla Grodd and stuff. And then the second story is it involves the corruption of science, and all of a sudden, all of the conspiracy theories are true. And Barry being a man of science, so it's stuff, like the Earth is flat and all this other stuff. To Barry, who's a man of science, it's not making sense. Come to find out, it's the prankster behind it all, where he's like, no, the old prankster would have done other things, not me. I'm the new one. And so, but they felt like stories that would have been in like, an annual or a special of some kind, and not like it wasn't up to that level that some of these other ones have been. So that was it. Swamp Thing still maintained quality, and Superman, did too. So, but those are the ones that I read.
All right, cool. All right, well, Connor then, we'll talk about a Patreon book. So the way this works is every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, some of our patrons at the higher tiers, it's a relatively high one, but you can make me or Connor read a book on the show of your choosing. And the book that Connor is reading, because finally someone decided to go easy on him, is Severed Issue 2. So take it away.
Yeah. I just before we get to that, I'm pretty sure the Snyder book I was reading.
Undiscovered Country.
Undiscovered Country, thank you. God, names of things tonight not coming to me. I'm pretty sure that's back next month. At least tentatively scheduled for next month. So I have to see if Tyler wants me to just get back to that, or if he wants me to wait. I don't know. But this issue of Severed, if you recall, the first issue was actually kind of split roughly in two. You had the Jack, the runaway kid from home, and then you had the stuff with the salesman kind of eating the kid, basically. It was split pretty evenly. This is a lot more heavily weighted towards Jack. There's only like a couple of pages dedicated to the salesman. So it feels a lot more focused than the first issue, which is interesting. But it's basically, it picks up right where we left off with Jack. He's on the train. He had his violin and stuff stolen from him when he on the carriage he did get into, and escaped into the next one with some other like runaway kids. But he's not having it. He's like, no. That's the only thing his dad left him. It gives you that reminder of, okay, he was an orphan. Kind of, his dad dropped him off at his mother's, and she adopted him. So it's this violin that he left, and a picture of him playing it with the baby him there. And they're like the only possessions he ran away with, and so he's not standing for it. He's going back in to get it. Even though he's warned, no, those guys will just throw you off the track. There's no point in going for that if you can't survive, basically. And he gets in some trouble, as expected. But one of the other kids, Sam, comes and gives him a hand and helps out in the end, and in return, because he offers Sam, it's like, hey, come and help me for a buck. It'll be great. And he's like, oh, a buck's no good to me if I get thrown off the train and get splattered. And so I'll do it for some cigarettes though. And he's like, I don't smoke, so I don't have any. And after Sam eventually comes and rescues him, feels bad. He actually goes back to steal some cigarettes from them for Sam, which is the start of this bonding friendship between them. And they finally get to Chicago. He's completely out of his depth. Jack is, he's in the big city. Sam pickpockets him just to prove a point that, hey, you don't know what you're doing. I just took this without you knowing, and that's everything you've got gone. Come with me. I know a cheap place to rent a room, and we'll get cleaned up before we go and find your dad at the Majestic Theater. And it's while they're in the room, there's the reveal that Sam is actually a girl. She's dressed up as a boy because it's safer out on the streets like that. Not entirely safe, because she points out people will do bad things to boys as well, and that's why Jack was in trouble in this very issue. But it's safer. So it's like, hey, my name's still Sam. It's just short for Samantha. And they go to the Majestic together, and they're like, "Oh, maybe that's your dad. Or I don't know." And he goes up to them after the show, and they're like, "No, I don't know him. Sorry. I've never known a guy by that name to play here." But he does go back inside. The person who has been playing the club, he goes back inside and checks. And he must have been an alternate or something, because he did leave a forward and address all the way back in Mississippi. So they're like, how the hell am I going to get there? And Sam has this idea. It's like, hey, you play the fiddle. Why don't you just, I'll be your manager. We'll take a 50-50 cut. We'll earn some money, and we'll take a car, down together. It'll be nice. And that's pretty much it for their plot. It's really straightforward, but it's really well written. The characters, both of them, feel really well rounded and real. And this Bond's relationship they've got going is really well formed in basically just this issue. So they had very little interaction in the last one. So it's really solid stuff. And the other side of it is a lot quicker. You have the salesman. You have a little follow-up of what happened. At the end of the last issue, you have a detective come to the nuns and be like, hey, we found this body, and there was a name that we think belonged to a boy from here. Could you come and identify the body? And she's like, I can't be him. He took an apprenticeship with General Electric. But I'm like, well, can you just come and look anyway? And he's like, I must warn you, it's not for the faint of heart. We believe this boy may have been cannibalized. And they go down there, and it is the first and one of the only full-page splashes in the whole book. And it is this gruesomely fantastic image of this boy strung up like on hooks, going like hooks in like his neck and his arms, and then just eaten away at various bits. His ribs are on show. He's missing most of one leg, like the bone's gone. Everything's just been snapped clean off. The other leg, like all the thigh, is completely gone. Like just been eaten away. Just all the flesh. It's just the bone there. But the bottom half of the leg still just been. It looks mostly intact. It's this incredibly gruesome image, and it doesn't show you too much. It's like it's all in the shadow. Just gives you enough that you can see what's missing, but not like really grimy details of it either. It's the page of the issue for sure. It's incredible moment. But then we have a little follow up to this at the very end. The salesman. He's looking over Jack. He's kind of noticed Jack and Sam kind of. He's watching them from the alley of them making this agreement to go 50-50. He's like, looking on. But he's often visits. He runs into someone, and it's a salesman. And the reason I call him the salesman is because he doesn't have a set name. He was Mr. Porter in the first issue, I think, and he takes a new name here. But even in the Let's page at the back, Snyder just refers to him as the salesman. He is the traveling demon. But he goes and runs this guy who's selling phonographs, called Alan Fisher. He sells phonographs for Victor. And so, what's your name? And he goes, I'm Alan Fisher from Toledo. And he repeats it all back to him. And he takes his identity, and that's the end of the issue of him. Kind of he carves a symbol into himself. Actually, he's kind of like it feels very reminiscent to like Zaz almost, with the way he cuts himself, like the things that he does. But he marks them. It's not just tally marks; it's an identity. Like he's marked this target with he's scarred a little like fiddle into his chest. And he talks about how most music men are a dime a dozen, but you've got a unique voice. Like he's sent something for this kid's going to be a good meal, and he marks his meals with an active symbol of what they're going to taste, like a reminder almost. This fiddle here, it's not just a number. The imagery of it's very it reminds you of that quite strongly, but it's really evocative art. This gaunt, creepy face. Just him looking in the mirror, carving this into his chest, and repeating back, my name's Alan Fisher, and I work for Victor. He's leaning into this identity. Going to come after him in the next issue, and that's it. But it's a wonderfully creepy issue, and it does a really good job of setting up the relationship between Jack and Sam. It's a solid 8.
All right. So for Patreon, then I have American Vampire issue 7 to read. Scott Snyder, of course, and Rafael Albuquerque. And the last issue was Cash, who we were introduced to in Vegas, taking the feds, which obviously one's Felicia Book, to the local the runner of the brothel, who turns out to be none other than Skinner Sweet, and they kind of confront, and obviously Cash suspects that he's involved in his own father's death, so there's a lot of tension there. And they bring out the prostitute who was with the murdered person from the last issue, and she's completely naked. And Cash is kind of pleasant with her. He's run into her before. There's kind of a gentle touch here. But because Skinner keeps being slimy, Felicia kind of loses her shit and starts screaming at him, knowing full well who he is, because she calls him by his alias, but she knows it's Skinner Sweet. She knows exactly who it is, and as we find out later in the issue, Skinner knows who she is too. He can smell Book on her, because his Book's daughter. He can smell the Book coming from her blood. So they kind of set this up, and Cash gets really pissed at her because that was really unprofessional, despite the fact that he has a reason to be furious with him, because he thinks he murdered his father, but he's never lost his shit. His father never lost his shit on the job because he believed in the law, and kind of reads her the riot act about it. And she notably does seem to actually get affected by this. She feels like she did something wrong. She knows she did something wrong by losing her shit and kind of yelling at him. And ends in this really sort of somber note. And we get this flashback showing Cash with his adopted father not too long before he died, because he tells him that his wife's pregnant. So we know this, at most is however many months ago she is pregnant. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head how many months she is. She's like 7 or 8 months pregnant. So it's all relatively recent in the timeline that this stuff's been happening. And, it's all these somber beats of him with her lying in bed and all the rest of it. And Felicia likewise with her partner kind of apologizing for losing her shit. And this is where they mention the vassals. We find out that they're not just feds. They're from the vassals, which is this vampire intelligence community. And he points out that, all of us in the vassals have some kind of grudge. We're all in it because we knew someone who was killed by a vampire or something like that. We all have some personal connection to what brought us to this group. So this is a big bit of mythology building here. But Skinner Sweet shows up in the shadows behind her to let her know that, he knows who she is, and that he has an agreement with the vassals, that he's got immunity, he's off limits. And it kind of ends. There's a beautiful bit of art here at the end where, as he leaves through the curtains are kind of flowing behind her, and she's in shadow, and she's just sort of left kind of like she wants to go after Skinner Sweet, but she can't because he has immunity for helping them with whatever he's helped them with, presumably with the other vampires in recent times. So I imagine this is I don't remember when this story comes up. I'm sure it does, exactly why he has this immunity. But probably even in this story itself it'll be revealed, because it's been a while since I read all this stuff for the first time. But this page was handled wonderfully. The way he pops out of the shadows, the way she's left standing, the curtains flowing in the wind, just left isolated. And then there's a gorgeous 2-page spread. It's a really simple 2-page spread, but of the dam, which we've been hearing so much about. They go to talk to one of the people who are building the dam, one of the people who own it. And he talks about how this is America's pyramid. This is their monument. That's everyone cares about it. He says that it's probably one of the workers that killed his partner because, the slaves didn't like the pharaohs that much in Egypt, and they point out this is a ridiculous comparison. They're workers, not slaves. You're paying them, at least as fair as a wage as you could get in the time period, I assume. And they kind of get mad at him, and they show him the crime scene photo of what happened to his partner. And his partner, the guy goes white as a sheet, and he's like, I have to go for a moment, I'll be back. And he goes to make a phone call, and it becomes clear that he knows what vampires are, because whoever he's calling is a vampire. He's like, hey, my partner was killed, he was drained, I saw the crime scene photo, this is a vampire. And whoever this vampire is on the other end of the phone, who's it's in complete shadows, you don't get to see it, he tells him, like, okay, we've sent our own people, they should be arriving there tomorrow. But by the time the phone call's ending, this vampire killer, whoever murdered the first guy, shows up and kills him. And the others outside, Cash and Felicia and the other guy, they hear the scream, and they're complaining that, he's probably talking to someone on the phone that we should probably question. They open the door and he's dead. Like, whoever it is has already fled. He's gone. which obviously Skinner is still a suspect because we know Skinner can travel in the daytime because this is broad daylight when this all happens. So Skinner is still a suspect, but the art here is wonderful because it's got the thing where they've opened the door and like the harsh daylight comes into this really dark office, so you see like just the perfect like rectangle of light in the wall, but with their shadows in it. It's perfectly atmospheric, and the contrast between the daylight and like this little tiny dark room is wonderful. And Cash gets really upset. He's like, "You guys clearly know something you're not telling me. You have to tell me what's going on, or I'm going to start, breaking skulls." And Felicia's like, "Look, Chief McCogan, like, what do you know about vampires?" And it kind of it sets up that they're going to tell him. I assume he's not going to believe them immediately in the next issue. I don't remember if he does, but it feels like it's something he's going to really doubt and question. And maybe by the end of the issue, maybe he'll believe that. That might be the main story of next issue. But there is an epilogue. There's an epilogue to this particular issue, which is presumably two members of the Vassals, although I'm just assuming that, roll up in a car, one's got a crossbow, they're at a house in California, and they're like, okay, so, is this her? And the guy says to the woman, he's like, just make no mistake about it. And then we see Pearl from the first arc. She's with her husband. He's got a guitar on his back and everything. They seem to be having a happy little, life in the, out by the ocean. They're living their life, quite happy. But the caption reads, Pearl Jones may be the most deadliest vampire on Earth. So I don't know if this is them coming after her because they think she needs to be taken out, or if they're coming here to try and recruit her to go after whatever's happening in Vegas. Like, I don't know exactly where this is. Like, I can't remember. I've read this before, but I don't remember. I'm actually kind of excited about finding out. But because obviously we had the previous issue and then pretty much all of this one, barring this last 2 pages with no Pearl, that it's kind of a big deal seeing her at the end here. I almost wish we went a whole arc without her, just to like really like hit me when she does come back. Like, oh yeah, she's still in the time frame here because we've moved ahead in time, but not that much. Like it's only a decade later, if that. So it's exciting to bring her back out of the story. I'm curious to see how she fits back into this. But I think it's kind of a downbeat issue because it's mostly kind of the tension between all the parties involved of like where they are, like how they feel about each other, and building a little bit of mythology. But the ending is expertly handled. The end of the dam stuff, but the murder of the other like dam owner or builder or whatever his correct title would be. I think that's handled perfectly in the art. It's wonderful. Albuquerque's stuff here, and that's in broad daylight, so it handles things really well. And then the Skinner showing up to talk to Felicia was also phenomenal. So, really good, building the story, building all this stuff. The art's still atmospheric as shit, and like I say, there's something so exciting about the way this book moves through its time periods because the vampires are immortal, so we can keep going ahead in time. It's almost like I'm not going to say he's definitely inspired by the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but that show and Angel both had these flashback episodes occasionally of the vampire characters in different time periods, and I almost wonder if that was part of the inspiration here. We said, no, what if we actually just went through it sequentially, jumping from this decade to that decade to this decade, because that's kind of what the book is. Each arc is in a new decade. So no, I dig it, but at the same time building this greater mythology of what the vampire ecosystem is in the US and the world at large. So super cool. I would rate this quite comfortably like an 8.5. I think, I mean, the book's not really had a disappointing issue yet. I will say I do like that we've moved away from having the backups, because the backups meant that the main story was shorter, and I did feel those chapters, while very good, felt a little shortchanged. And I think this issue and the last issue feel a bit fuller as a main course, as the main reason why I'm here to read the book. So and I like the backup, don't get me wrong. But I think I said this last time, or maybe the time before when I actually finished that part, that I almost wish it was just a separate miniseries that came out at the same time or afterwards or whatever. But that said, it is important that it did get told before this arc. I think there's so much context for what Skinner's origin is that plays into kind of where he is now, that this is important. So yeah, there you go. 8.5 for me on that book. So that is all the books that we're going to talk about today. This takes us to the part of the show where we pick our favourite stuff of the week, favourite panel / moment, favourite cover, favourite art, and top 5. And for the first time in a while, we actually can give a top 5 of the books. Connor's about to be a little whiny
No, I've got 5.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, it's not really 5 because I don't really like this one. You know what he's like.
Well, if it's below like a certain score, it shouldn't be on it. Just saying.
Yeah, if you're doing like a top list in general, sure, but like you're just ranking this week's books.
It's not good enough.
The point is that
Why
if
is everything an argument with you two? I swear.
Hey, I didn't start this.
The point is that if the
but-
number 5 book is bad, then that's an indicative of how the week was. So that says something in and of itself. There's a purpose to it.
Only having 3 says more.
All right. Moving on.
Yes, Matt, would you like to give your panel / moment of the week?
Yeah, so there's a bunch I could choose from.
How many of them are from Suicide Squad?
A lot, but there's also some in Basket and maybe Aquaman, but it's going to be from Suicide Squad. And I'm going to take the Ted Cord revealed because that was literally jaw-dropping for me. Was not expecting it in the slightest.
Yeah, that's a fair pick. Can't really argue with it. Yeah, I'm also picking something from Suicide Squad. Let's not kid ourselves. I think I will go. I think before we talked about it, I might have picked the first head explosion with the gunshot because of Deadshot's choice. But I think I'm leaning towards the second explosion now because the more emotional goodbye. Like actually looking at the panels and analyzing how it's handled in the art, I think I'm going to go with that over the actual head shot as opposed to the head explosion. But that'll be my pick. Connor?
That's fair. Both great choices. Ted might have been mine if I'd gone first. As it is, I'm actually going to pick the first headshot explosion, but for a reason in the sense that by censoring it, it actually sets up the second one to be more impactful than it would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just, oh, this is, it was a funny beat in itself when you read it, but then in context of later of how that actually makes the second one land even better. I think it's deserving of highlighting for that reason.
Yeah, sure. All right. So best cover of the week, Connor. What you got?
Let me have a quick look at covers. Oh, there's some nice ones. There's two really good Aquaman. Aquaman's not fair. It's got a Sejic cover and a Tyler Kirkham cover that are both pretty great.
Yeah, I'm actually, for some reason, Diamond's loading really slow for me, but I think I might really like the Suicide Squad variant, but I've not seen all of it yet.
The Suicide Squad variant is really nice.
I've only got an arm so far, but I get the impression that it's going to be really good.
Wait, which arm? The top arm or the left?
Top arm. It's going from top to bottom. I've got a face now. This is looking pretty likely for my pick. Now that I've seen a face.
That is really nice. I would like to give a shout out as well to Dan Morrow's Justice League cover. I think that's really nice, that variant.
Yeah, I will confirm I'm definitely picking the Suicide Squad variant, which is notable because it's a Cedric cover. But Matt, what are you picking?
Well, I'm not looking at Diamond because I thought we weren't looking at Diamond anymore.
Did you just say the Suicide Squad was a Cedric cover?
No.
No, okay.
I said it was notable because there's a Cedric cover this week, then I didn't pick it.
I think because that is a Cedric cover. And I was like, what?
No, it's notable that there was one and I didn't pick it.
Yeah.
Yes, Matt.
I'm going to go with the Lola Woods cover. There's a lot going on there. And after reading it, the fact that there's a stream of water going into nothingness really, really hits a chord.
Yeah, no, that's nice. I'll go with the Sejic Aquaman in the end, I guess. I really like having like the water spirit woman kind of framing that around there. I think it gives it a nice touch.
That's fair. That's why I added a little shout out to the Basketful of Heads variant, which has the axe framed in such a way that it looks like she either has a mohawk or it's representative of like a battle helmet because of the way it's like sort of because it's a profile shot.
I could have seen that one.
It's a profile shot and she's got the axe sort of resting on her shoulder, but because of where it's resting, it makes this.
Send it to you so you can see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stupid diamonds that take forever to load.
I had to wait for I was actually giving you a play-by-play of me seeing the image loading.
Yeah, you guys do talk about this every so often with Diamond being really slow. And I never have that problem with Diamond. For me, though, Comixology is that site where it will just, for some reason, just stagger its loading for whatever reason.
Comixology never has a problem for me for whatever reason.
There it is. No, I see it. It's good, but I think I'm going to stick with... Oh,
yeah. No, I want to give it a shout. I don't want to pick it. But
Yeah.
I thought it was cool enough to mention.
That's Gabriel Rodriguez. Is that who worked on Lock and Key? Because the name sounds familiar.
I have no idea. I've never read it.
I don't know.
I don't know. It feels like I'm gonna check. Yeah, it is. So that'll be why. Okay, final variant.
Oh,
of
the
this
Lola
too.
Woods variant was good too.
Yeah, the
Creepy.
prison one.
Well, I think we've all picked, so we could move on to best art of the week then. Connor.
That's Suicide Squad.
Yeah, it's Suicide Squad, Matt.
Suicide Squad.
There you go. All right, top 5 of the week, Matt. You can go first.
Number 1 is Suicide Squad. Number 2 is Basketful of Heads. Number 3 is Lola Woods. 4 is Aquaman. And 5 is Supergirl.
Okay, Connor.
Suicide Squad. Lola Woods. Aquaman. Basketful of Heads. Justice League.
Okay, Suicide Squad's number 1, obviously. Number 2, Basketful of Heads. Number 3, Aquaman. Number 4, Lola Woods. Number 5, Supergirl. There you go. Easy peasy. So that is our top 5 books of the week. I'll tell you what's coming next week. Which, and again, it's kind of weird right now because some of the physical books are being delayed at comic shops and whatnot. So some stuff that we did talk about this week may actually be next week for you if you're just getting them physically. But what's coming next week in terms of what we'll be talking about, plus what else is scheduled for next week officially. Detective Comics 1022. Action Comics 1022. Oh, they've lined up. Detective's going to pull ahead in a minute, actually, because that's going to be double shipping occasionally.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Wonder Woman 756 is out next week, as is Justice League Dark 22. We got Batman Superman number 9. Shazam issue 12 is out. Catwoman 22. John Constantine Hellblazer issue 6. Far Sector issue 6. The Birds of Prey one-shot is finally hitting the comic book stores.
All 96 pages of it.
Oofed. Speaking of 96 pages, Catwoman 80th anniversary special number 1.
I don't even know if I care anymore.
I'll be honest, I think I want to read that more than I do the Birds of Prey one shot, but
I mean, sure. I mean, no, I'm gonna read the Birds of Prey one shot at some point, but I'm not gonna read it for the show. I don't have time to. I'm not gonna schedule in. Oh, here's a 100-page issue.
Sure.
That that's a graphic novel essentially that I'm sitting down to read. I'll read that just on my own time.
Yeah. But we got a Catwoman special. We got Event Leviathan Checkmate issue 1, which is probably my most anticipated of the week, buddy. I would say. And that's it. So that is what's coming next week. Obviously, we don't cover all those books. Some of them we just don't read, but that is what's coming next week. So you can look forward to that. So that basically wraps up the show. This is kind of the time where I will plug you a couple things. I will tell you to support the show. You can like on YouTube, which is super important. It lets YouTube know you recommend us to other people, and they might do so because of that. You can support us financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month. The $5 tier specifically gets you access to the show a day early, as well as previously, and you get to vote occasionally on new books for previously as well. If you don't know what previously I'm talking about, is previously in the Multiverse is our sister show where me and Carl work our way through classic DC runs, and that's actually kind of changing how it's getting presented on YouTube, because we have a Comics from the Multiverse channel, which we mentioned at the start of the show, where it's going to just be split up. This show is also being split up for that channel, but the full podcast is still going to exist, and the full previously is still going to exist in audio format as well. So if you listen to it that way, it's still staying the same. Don't worry about it. But go to Patreon. I'll take this time as well to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to David Sharp, Tyler Hess, Alison M. Fordyce, and Cindy Palacios. They're all $20 or above patrons, so they get the producer credits. So we'll do all that. Get us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. In fact, someone just tweeted something really nice about us, which I just retweeted out.
Oh, nice.
So go there and join in the conversation. Ask us things or whatever. I don't know. What do people do on Twitter? Share memes.
And real quick, last week I was on a friend of mine's Star Wars themed podcast, Octo Radio, and we did a brief discussion on Solo and a commentary. So if that's something that you'd want to listen to me ramble about my favorite Star Wars movie, it's out there.
Do I bleep that entire thing so you just hear me go?
No.
A week ago I was bleep.
I mean, I'll just keep saying Octo Radio at random spots. You're gonna make it real hard for yourself.
I'm just cracking a joke because it's Star Wars, Matt. That's all.
I know, but it's something I could see you doing. So you know.
Yes. Go check out if you like Star Wars and you want to hear Matt talk about Star Wars. Go check out Athlete's Foot Radio, whatever it's called.
Athlete's Foot Octo.
Yes. So that is the show. That is episode 204. To get the number right here, finally at the end of the show. So yeah, let us know what you thought of the books this week, and keep following along. And we'll see you next time. It has been a pleasure. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.
Pete really loves Star Wars.